Hello, everybody. Welcome to the regular business meeting for the District of Squamish for Tuesday, July 17th. Holland Squallen, Clus Tuktumuk, Ta Squamish Oakmail. As always, we're gathered to do our work today on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish Nation and are incredibly grateful for doing so. Please be advised this council meeting is being live streamed, recorded, and will be available for the public to view on the District of Squamish website following the meeting. If you have concerns, please notify the corporate officer present at the meeting. In this case is Victoria Ray. Could I have someone move adoption of the agenda, please? Moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Anderson. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So our first order of business is a delegation from Nature Squamish. So come on up and you'll be at the podium. Did you get a little run through before we started? Okay, you're there, you're on camera, and go ahead. You have 5 minutes to address council.
Great. Thank you, Council, for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm Tara, a local and member of Nature Squamish, here on behalf of the Bird Friendly team. I'm speaking today to ask for your support in our application for Bird Friendly Town certification through Nature Canada. This is a community-led initiative. There is no cost to the district to apply or maintain the certification, and the request today is simply for the Council to support us in moving the application forward, meeting the program's criteria. So, why birds and why Squamish? Squamish, as we all know, is a place where people come to connect with nature. We are incredibly fortunate to live in a community surrounded by mountains, forests, rivers, wetlands, and the ocean. People travel here from all around the world to hike, climb, bike, paddle, and experience the landscapes that make Squamish so special. But what makes Squamish truly unique is not just the surface level scenery, it's also the incredible diversity of life that surrounds us. Our forests, rivers, estuary, and wildlife are all connected, and birds are a very important part of that story. Squamish sits along the Pacific Flyway, which is one of North America's major migratory bird routes. This makes our community an important resting and feeding place for migratory birds, while also providing year-round habitat for many resident species, such as our beloved eagles in Brackendale. Unfortunately, bird populations across North America have declined by more than 25% over the last 50 years. These declines are connected to challenges such as habitat loss, window collision, predation, light pollution, pesticide, invasive species, and climate change. The good news is that communities like ours can make a difference. Nature Canada's Bird Friendly Town program provides a practical, science-based framework to help communities protect birds and biodiversity. It focuses on reducing threats to birds, protecting and restoring habitat, and encouraging residents to learn about, enjoy, and help care for the natural world around them. It also recognizes the work that communities are already doing and gives us a path to continue improving. Across Canada, more than 40 municipalities, including Comox, Saanich, Vancouver, and Lions Bay, have already embraced this initiative. Squamish has an opportunity to join that growing network of communities, showing that protecting nature is part of who we are. The full list of the Bird Friendly Town criteria and our progress can be found in the Bird Friendly Town City supporting document. One of the things that makes this initiative very special is that it truly comes from the community and collaborative at many levels. Our Bird Friendly team is currently made up of 13 independent volunteers and many more passionate community members supporting our work, such as some of these behind me. The well-established Nature Squamish, formerly the Squamish Environmental Society, is hosting us as a program literally under their wing. Our volunteers are already actively engaged throughout Squamish, representing and contributing to groups such as the Squamish River Watershed Society, Squamish Climate Action Network, the Sea to Sky Invasive Species Council, and so on and so on. Together, we bring a wide range of knowledge and experience to this initiative. One of the incredible things is that thanks to the work the district has already done, we have many criteria fulfilled already. Many of the district's existing policies and environmental initiatives that improve our community also benefit birds. One example is the district's pesticide and herbicide use bylaw, which helps support a healthier environment for people and wildlife, or the new speed limit downtown also helps avoid collisions. Going forward, one of the mandatory criteria for the certification is community collaboration through the bird team, driving the project forward. The bird team represents a different perspective within the community and must include a liaison with the municipality. This helps bring together community knowledge while keeping communication open and allowing us to work as efficiently as possible together as this project continues. Through community events, education, and opportunities to connect with nature, we can help residents and visitors alike better understand and appreciate the birds that share this place with us. A great example of this was this past spring when we hosted our recent Squamish Bird Festival. In partnership with the Adventure Center, Arrowwood Gaines, and the Squamish Welcome Center, we brought people together across 6 days, both indoors and outside, to celebrate our local bird life and learn more about the species that call Squamish home. The bird-friendly team looks forward to building on that momentum and continue to engage our neighbors, our youth, and the many visitors who come to experience our backyard. Another part of this program is Indigenous engagement. The District of Squamish is located within the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation, and recognition of this referral was sent to the Squamish Nation on July 8th, inviting them to appoint a representative to participate on the bird team. The referral and the Nation's response have been included as attachments to this report. In their response, dated August 14th, 2025, the Squamish Nation advised that they did not have the capacity at that time to appoint a representative. However, they expressed an interest in staying informed as the initiative moves forward and asked to be notified of future opportunities to participate. We greatly value the opportunity to one day include the perspective of the Squamish Nation on the bird team. Their deep connection to these lands and waters, along with the generation of knowledge that birds that have long called this area home, would provide invaluable insight to help guide the conservation of Squamish birds' populations. So, in conclusion, becoming a bird-friendly town is our opportunity to celebrate the environmental leadership already happening in Squamish. It would strengthen our reputation as a community that values nature-based recreation and tourism, connects us with other bird-friendly communities across Canada, and provides access to valuable resources, partnerships, and learning opportunities. Most importantly, it'd be a positive step forward towards protecting the natural environment that makes Squamish such a special place to live, work, and visit. We hope that Council will support this resolution and help make Squamish one of Canada's bird-friendly towns. We quite literally cannot do it without you. Thank you so much for your time and support. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation and bringing this initiative forward. Council, any questions for our guests? We also have the wording of the request is in your council agenda package on page 7 of 200. Councillor Anderson.
Yes, I do have a question. I'm sorry, I should have done my homework and looked into your information more fully. That is the Bird Friendly Towns and Cities Network. And my question is, you've mentioned the Pacific Flyway and the migratory birds. The Canadian Wildlife Service is a signatory of our estuary management plan and sat alongside the Squamish Estuary Management or Squamish Environmental Conservation Society on the Estuary Management Committee for years. Do you have connections in those other coastal estuary towns, Cowichan, Nanaimo, Puntledge, and of course the Fraser River? That should be quite interesting to compare notes with those other estuary towns, if you like, as to what they're doing for the same cause.
Any and all organizations across our country. It'd be great, especially as we're starting out with our current project. There are so many projects that have been going on for years to get different ideas and initiatives that they're working on and learn from them together.
Thank you, Mayor Herford. I'd be happy to put forward the.
I think we have I think I'm here. I'm feeling a question first, but then thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor French.
I don't have a question. I have a slightly different motion that I think goes a little farther.
I'm going to go back to Councillor Anderson as he's ready to make a motion, and perhaps we can amend the motion or figure out how to address your concern there.
Over to Councillor French.
Oh, the great Canadian standoff. It's a good way to start the night. Okay, after you, Councillor French.
Okay, well, assuming there are no further questions, the motion I was contemplating is that Council direct the Mayor to write a letter of support to Nature Squamish, indicating support for efforts to achieve bird-friendly town certification for Squamish. And if it's seconded, I'll speak to it.
I'll second it as it's tasking me with a task, which I'm happy to take on. Go ahead.
All right. I see this certification as being similar to Bear Smart status, just on a maybe slightly smaller scale. And anything that we can do to protect wildlife, I think that we should do it. And this is a very small step that will bring big results potentially. Clearly, it's a program that's well thought out. It's national in scope, so well established, and has the potential to engage residents and encourage them to do things at their homes and around the community that will prevent bird deaths. I see no downsides to this.
Thank you. And Councillor French, if you have that in writing, you can get it to our minute taker. Thank you. Happy to support this. Growing up, my backyard was the dike on the Squamish River, and the eagles frequented my backyard. And anyone that knows my mother knows that she's always been a place where injured animals can come, and we help get them to where they need to be. So this is an important topic, and it's something that's that I think deserves our support. So thank you, Councillor French, for bringing forward this more fulsome way that we can support this project, and thank you so much for all of your work and your team. So thank you. Any other comments on this? Go ahead, Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, happy to support this. And I did have a meeting with one of your representatives a few months ago, and was sort of a little bit sad or worried that I hadn't heard about the actual request for the resolution. And so I'm glad to see we actually have a group here ready and asking for this and carrying on the work. I think it's clear from how far we already are of how well this is aligned with what we do as a community, and pushing further, I think, is important. It is maybe worth a read for to pay attention to where we aren't making the cut, or things that are standing against us in applying for this. May bear some thought, but thank everyone that is contributing to this, which I think is really so well aligned with what Squamish is and can be. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Hamilton, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks very much for bringing this forward. This is well aligned with what I believe Squamish what I believe Squamish's identity really is, which is based in nature. So much of what we do is aligned with the mission and the things outlined in the requests, and I hope that our community can get over the bar on those few things that do remain. And thanks for bringing this to us.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. And we'll get you that. We'll follow up. Our staff will follow up with you to make sure we get you what you need. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Next order of business is unscheduled public attendance. So if anyone has a matter that's emergent or urgent in nature and needs to be dealt with before the next regular business meeting, this would be your opportunity to present yourself. Okay, I have a bit of a script, and then we'll put it over to you. So essentially, I'm looking for the topic you'd like to discuss. So very brief, and then council will debate whether we need to hear about whether that meets the criteria to be dealt with today, and then we take a vote on that, and then you may or may not have then I'll go into what happens next from there if we're successful. So could you introduce yourself and then the topic you'd like us to discuss this evening?
So my name is Lindsay Nevison. I'm here representing a few different hats. I'm a mother, a resident, and also representatives for the Squamish Montessori School. And I'm here today to address traffic calming measures in the 42,000 block of Loggers Lane with the changes that have happened due to Finch Drive.
Okay. Council, is this, I'd be looking to council to see if this is, should we hear from the residency or have another course of action? That's your hand, Councillor Green?
Yeah, I'm happy to hear.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Councillor Pettingill seconds. Okay, I will call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. Okay, so you have 5 minutes to address council, and I just before we do that, this is that most issues that come to us through this, I don't know that we've been able to get to a resolution here, but it is. It can be an important step to having it addressed, just to manage expectations of what we can do in one touch. But I'll turn it over to you. So go ahead.
Thank you. All right, I'll make this as quick as I can. So good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Lindsay Nevison. I'm here to ask for your support in improving traffic safety along the 42,000 block of Loggers Lane, particularly in front of the Squamish Montessori School, Daycare and Independent School, and Brennan Park Recreation. This area is one of the busiest community corridors in Squamish. Every day it's used by young children and their families walking and cycling to Squamish Montessori School, as well as Brennan Park and many other activities in the area. People accessing Brennan Park Recreation Center, transit users, residents traveling through the neighborhood. It is already designated as a park zone, recognizing that this is a place where safety of people should come first. Squamish Montessori School serves preschool, 2.5 years of age, up to grade 6, many who arrive on foot or by bicycle, and some are dropped off by their families. These are some of the community's youngest and most vulnerable road users, making safe vehicle speeds especially important in this area. Despite existing park zone already in place, speeding continues to be a concern. The district has periodically installed digital speed display signs, and the RCMP do conduct enforcement in the area. While these efforts are appreciated, they are temporary measures, and once signs or enforcement are gone, the speed then resumes. Traffic conditions have also changed significantly. The closure of Finch Drive associated with the LNG project has redirected more vehicles to Loggers Lane. At the same time, ongoing construction along Loggers Lane, Centennial Way, and Finch Drive East area have increased traffic volumes and altered driving patterns. These changes have created additional pressure on the road that already serves school, recreation facilities, and neighborhood residents. My concern is not simply about inconvenience, it's about the safety. Throughout the day, young children and their families cross the corridor to attend school, access Brennan Park and transit, and enjoy nearby amenities. Increased traffic volumes combined with higher vehicle speeds create unnecessary risk in the location where we should expect drivers to slow down and exercise caution. I recognize that the decisions about traffic calming are based on technical studies and the district traffic calming policy. I'm not asking council to predetermine the outcome of that process. Instead, I'm asking that council support a comprehensive review of this section of Loggers Lane in light of today's traffic conditions. Specifically, I'd like to ask council staff to conduct an updated traffic volume and speed study that reflect current conditions, including the impact of Finch Drive closure, nearby construction, and evaluate whether permanent traffic calming measures such as speed bumps or other appropriate treatments are warranted in this location. Our community continues to grow and traffic patterns change. Transportation infrastructure should adapt as well. This corridor connects important community destinations used by residents of all ages, especially young children. I believe we have the opportunity to make this a safer place before a serious incident occurs. I thank you for your time, and I hope I have kept that brief.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this issue forward. Council, any questions before we contemplate what we should do with in response to the submission we've heard? Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks very much for bringing this to us. We have a mechanism to submit traffic calming requests. Have you submitted a request through that mechanism?
We did. We've been working, we tried to take, steps ahead of this. We have contacted the RCMP. We've done the digital sign request. We did put in a formal request today, but we just had a couple of near miss incidents with our camp happening, as well as Brennan Park's camp. And so in light of that issue yesterday, we decided that this was a more important issue. So we submitted that application and then decided to come in person just to put a bit of a highlight on it.
Okay. Council, I'm curious about the impact here of the with all safety things, obviously being quick is important, but the impact of the Fortis pipeline project is one of the contributing factors here, and so I'm struggling to see which direction to go with this. Councillor Hamilton, yeah, do you have a?
Yeah, I know we might not have staff prepared to answer the question, but could staff let us know what are the next steps when we receive a traffic calming request? Because there are many in our community, right? And our challenge is prioritizing them, which doesn't mean something's not important. It just means something else may come to precedent. So can staff just speak to what the next process is?
I think it would be most appropriate if we referred this to staff so we come back to us if there's a decision or it just gets action if it follows through, because staff's not necessarily, we weren't all ready for this discussion here this evening. So I'm going to suggest that we refer this matter to transportation staff and our major projects team to work follow up, and that'll be my motion. Second by Councillor Hamilton. I think we do receive requests like this often, and which is why we went to the lengths to have the process in place to help filter them out. This one I think is quite unique, as the construction of the new buildings that are going to be operational soon, that intersection during that construction, the complication of the Fortis Eagle Mountain pipeline construction, changing traffic. I think there's a lot of things that are live right now that warrant a closer look and see if there's some measures that can they can be implemented, or that are planned to be implemented that can be accelerated, because I know that intersection is starting to come together, and that's not the totality of the issue, but there's probably multiple things. So that's why I think referring it to these two entities inside the organization is the path forward here for this evening. Do you have any comment on that, Councillor Pettingill?
I generally agree with you. I think there are some unique circumstances here with the various construction projects and rerouting of traffic and so on. My observation is also that in that area, other on the boulevard where I've seen a 30 implemented during school hours, I see, maybe anecdotally, but I drive it a lot, in my mind, a much better compliance than I see even before all this construction in front of Brennan Park there. And as the community rec center and gathering space, I do wonder if there is also a discussion, which realistically, where we are in election cycles and so on, it might be the next council that addresses that, but do we address some of the policy around how we prioritize what and where? Think about our mode shift goals. Like, this is a unique location as well, and so there are a few factors. I think maybe there are some immediate pieces to deal with in respect to the construction. There may be some additional longer term things to consider here as well.
Yeah, and my referring this to staff to maybe identify those things and bring them forward through budget would be the intent of the motion. So, but I generally agree. Councillor Stoner, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for being here and taking all the steps to add additional light to a really challenging situation. I'm really unfortunate to hear that there was a near miss. It's never something that anybody wants in any portion of our road. And as previous speakers have said, there are many portions of our community that are unsafe at different portions of time. This is a unique situation, and I am hopeful that by referring this to our transportation major project staff, with the active construction project that will hopefully in the not so distant term make that intersection better through that development, can find some interim ways to either reroute traffic to the south from the Finch component, and or improve the speeds as seen. It is disappointing to hear, because I know that we've previously heard from folks that actually the bigger industrial traffic that comes in that area is actually usually very respects quite well the like busy intersection, and the trucks tend to slow down. And so it's unfortunate to hear that that's not being followed through, but hopefully with some further engagement with our staff and the project managers in the area, we can come to a solution in the short term.
Thank you for that. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. Thank you. Is there anyone else that has a matter they'd like to have council consider this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on with our agenda. We have no public hearings this evening, so we're on to the consent agenda. I would like to pull two pieces of correspondence. So that's item 3 and 4, as well as 9 and the recommendation E1 from under the committee of the whole. Would anyone else like to pick apart the consent agenda further? I've got Councillor Pettingill, then French.
6BI, I think was 1, and 6BIV, which I think is 6B4. Letters.
Yeah. Okay. So I pulled the letter, but we'll add that B1 letter. So, Councillor French.
Yes, so I would like to pull the fuel price letter 6BV.
I think we have different. Numbering. That's VII.
Right.
It's,
Yeah, because the numbers changed.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
No, that's okay. And did I see other hands? Oh, yeah. Councillor Stoner, go ahead.
Yeah, and sorry, I'm working off the old agenda, so my numbering might be wrong, but I'd like to pull the committee of the whole meeting minutes, item A3 from June 23rd. I believe the correspondence may have already been pulled, but the one from Karen Elliot, Patricia Heintzman, and then old B2, which is the correspondence from Patrick Weiler on the Build Community Strong Fund, please.
Okay. We'll pull that one. Anything else? Okay. Would anyone like to move the remainder of the consent agenda? Moved by Councillor Hamilton, second by Councillor French. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. So we'll deal with those items in the order that they originally appeared, more or less, and we'll at the appropriate time later in the agenda. So now we're on to District of Squamish Official Community Plan Bylaw, number 2500 2017 Amendment Bylaw. This is the Steep Slopes Development Permit Area. And I will turn it over to staff when they're ready.
Right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Matt Gunn. I'm a planner here at the District of Squamish.
Sarah McJanet, Manager of Community Planning.
The intention of this meeting is to present a proposed steep slope development permit area for first and second reading. We have also, I'd like to highlight, we have our transportation engineer, Brent McMurtry, available for questions. Should they come up related to transportation, which they did last time. So we've got them this time. I'll start with a quick background to the project. Our current OCP includes policy to develop a steep slope DPA. On June 24th, 2025, staff presented a plan to develop a steep slope DPA and council endorsed that plan. On May 12th, 2026, staff presented a draft steep slope DPA. Council made 3 specific comments, which we'll discuss momentarily, and that directed staff to bring an OCP amendment for readings, which we are doing today. Before I address the comments from the May 12th council meeting, I'll provide 2-slide overview of the DPA. The proposed DPA applies to most slopes 30% or steeper identified on this map, which was created using recent LiDAR data. The DPA will be required for subdivision, construction, excavation more than 1.2 meters in depth, and removal of trees 20 centimeters or greater in diameter. Staff proposed a focused DPA with around 20 guidelines. The intention is to address critical issues without creating an overly onerous DPA structure. The proposed steep slope DPA guidelines address multiple factors. Aspects include assessing safety of development proposals through steep slope hazard assessment, minimizing visual impacts of site alteration, building form and retaining walls, assessing development impacts on groundwater and surface water, ensuring safety of excavation, cut slopes, rock cuts, and setbacks through engineering approval, and ensuring cleared vegetation is replaced with fire-resistant, culturally significant vegetation. In the next slides, I'll provide a response to council comments from May 12th, 2026. The first council comment was a request that staff strengthen wording in the transportation network section to increase alignment with mode shift policy goals. To support this discussion, I want to provide a brief overview of where transportation on steep slopes is addressed in various stages of the development process, just to give some context to how that fits in. The OCP amendment and neighborhood plan stage is an important stage to consider trade-offs between, I got some animation. There we go. An important stage to consider trade-offs between development opportunities and transportation goals. This is where significant trade-offs can be contemplated about the location of future housing and access routes needed to reach those areas. However, road design is still at a preliminary status at this stage. In the rezoning stage, land use parameters and detailed road design are refined and road grades can be confirmed. This is another key stage for considering transportation and development trade-offs. At the subdivision stage, road designs are approved. Hazard mitigation and alignment with the subdivision and development control bylaw are the primary focus. And then by the time we reach the DP stage, many decisions about transportation have already been made in the process. At this point, the latitude for decisions on transportation routes has narrowed, but there are still opportunities to address a range of topics from hazard to visual impacts, and including some transportation items. And it is important to note that some applications will come forward that haven't gone through a recent rezoning or OCP amendment. They already have the zoning, and so development permit can address some of those topics at that time. And then at the building permit stage, steep slopes are only considered from a hazard mitigation perspective. With those considerations in mind, to address Council's comment, staff have strengthened alignment with mode shift goals in both OCP policy and the DPA guidelines to address the intent at multiple stages of the development process. We use similar wording for both of those sections, and for the OCP level, the proposed policy notes applications should include detail on how the development supports District of Squamish transportation mode share objectives, including the provision of viable walking and cycling connectivity routes and design that support efficient transportation or transit routes. The second council comment was to prioritize life safety and risk mitigation. This was implemented in the objectives and justification section by specifically noting risk aspects as the primary objective. Third council comment was to clarify the staff review process for letters from a qualified professional required under DPA exemptions. I believe council wanted to ensure that staff can require a peer review from another engineering firm at the cost of the applicant with that comment. And that option is indeed available. The option is specified in both the land development approval information procedure and the terms of reference for the steep slope hazard assessment. So no problem, we can always request the peer review. If council moving forward, next steps, if council gives the bylaw first and second reading, a public hearing could be held likely in early October, I believe, no, early September. And then with the three council comments addressed, the staff recommendation is to give the bylaw first and second reading, resolve that consultation has been satisfied, resolve that the bylaw is consistent with the District of Squamish Financial Plan and Waste Management Plan, and resolve that a public hearing be held. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much. I have a quick question. Can you go back to the slide around the active transportation piece? Does the viable walking and cycling connectivity routes design that can support efficient transit routes, that language, I'm thinking about situations like at Quest, say, where there's a staircase that is the shortcut in the walking route that's not accessible. Like, does accessibility, like, where does that requirement come in? And do we need to address that in the DPA, or is that sort of like a known accessibility piece that lives elsewhere?
To answer your question, I may grab a transportation engineer. Lifeline.
Hello, Brent McMurtry, Manager of Transportation. Thank you for the question. So accessibility is covered through, I guess, like, can be considered at different areas. There's building code requirements. There's CSA, Canadian Standards and Standards Associations. There's standards as well. There's not, and anytime you're in a steep slope, there's challenges and pretty significant trade-offs when you're looking at accessibility considerations and how to encourage people to take the most efficient mode, which may be walking up a staircase in an instance where constructing an accessible grade ramp that is significantly longer is less viable from a constructability perspective and a site access. So I think that this language is fairly high level to provide flexibility for staff to work with applicants to ensure accessibility is without a doubt a key consideration and addressed to ensure that that is not forgotten, but also that there isn't other opportunities that could improve site access for people walking that are not, that I guess like aren't overlooked.
Okay, I'll ponder that. Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. On the council comment number 3 from our previous meeting on this, I don't think I was super clear on seeking clarity for the qualified professional review process. So it wasn't so much whether we had the ability to seek a third party. It was more so an understanding of like when that would be expected and the costs associated, and if we have capacity within our existing team to review potential letters from a qualified professional for these sorts of matters. So it's more so around ensuring some level of predictability for applicants as to when this may or may not be sufficient. Because as drafted, it's quite vague. It says development under section 47.62, development for which a qualified professional provides a letter indicating that proposed land use does not impact slope stability, is not subject to steep slope hazards, and steep slope development permit is not warranted. So if an applicant comes forward and provides this letter, we hopefully have capacity, like, I guess one is, do we have capacity within our own team? And what is the threshold for which we would ask somebody to pay for a third party professional review?
Thanks for the question. In terms of the capacity of the department for QP report review, that's something within our existing capacity. So we have engineering staff that are able to provide that capacity in terms of the review. And a lot of those QP reports are already sort of under review through different applications. So through subdivision or through building permits. So we have existing requirements for technical reports. And so those are reviewed existing right now. So we don't anticipate any additional capacity requirement for the DP itself. And to the second question, in terms of the thresholds for requiring a peer review, I think typically our understanding is like when there's some kind of doubt as to the recommendations, or perhaps somebody that's maybe hasn't worked in locally before, there is always that opportunity to, as noted through the development procedures bylaw and our terms of reference, to request at the applicant's cost peer review. I don't know that it happens often, but it is an option for staff. Is there anything else you want to add there?
That's great.
Okay, Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, can staff remind me, I think DPA 3 normally comes to council. When it's applicable, DPA 1 is delegated, and I can't remember where the others are. Would this be delegated DPA or would come to council?
Through the chair, the intention is that this would be a delegated DP.
Okay, and then just in the, I appreciate the language that was added around alignment with mode shift goals and so on. But even in the things that come to council, sometimes we hear, well, this is just one thing, it's one guideline and it's not compliant, but you know, the rest are mostly, and so, you know, we just have to let this go. Is that sort of the situation here? Is that the level this is at, or given the conversation so on, this is sort of understood that this is a pretty critical guideline, or is it just, no, it's just one of however many in total?
Through the chair, the intention of DP guidelines is to provide the flexibility to allow them to apply to a range of situations. The fact that for this, we have it in both OCP and in the DP guidelines, I think provides some strength to the importance of it. And certainly, there has been a strong desire across the organization to support alternative transportation modes. So I think staff will recognize that and look for every opportunity to ensure that those are met within the context of, the different situations and what is possible.
And I guess just and it's come up more in accessibility in terms of DPA 3, at least from my perspective, but in terms of what is possible, sometimes we seem to interpret that or evaluate that as well. It's not really possible at this site, so we're not going to do it, as opposed to we can't do it, so we shouldn't do the development this way, or we should hold until we can find another. Where's the line, or is that it's really the subjective whole of the staff member assessing it is still where this lays, which makes me always uncomfortable. But, I think that's what we're saying. This is where this falls.
Through the chair. Because the range of situations where this will apply is great, has a large variation. The guidelines aren't intended to be definitive and say must be. They're intended to have that flexibility. And so I think the concern you're raising is, there is some possibility that there is subjectivity, and it'll have to be assessed. And it is, if it's delegated to staff as is intended, that decision will lie with the director. So yeah, there is some subjectivity there, but I think the intent of the department staff and the director would be to achieve as much as possible, given the context. Do you want to add?
Thank you. Council, other questions on this? Or if we're ready for motion, we'd entertain that as well. Councillor Hamilton?
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor French seconds. Would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, thanks very much for bringing this back to us. I know the steep slopes assessment has been one of those things on our to-do list for a long time, and it's good to see it finally coming through. I see that there's been a lot of work put into this, and I'm really grateful that the work in I forget the wording of the first slides, but to focus the DPA, try to create a concise DPA to really help everybody achieve good outcomes without getting overly burdened with excess requirements, focusing on steep slopes. And I also appreciate the focus and the priority here on the DPA guidelines, focusing on the safety of steep slopes, because I think we all need to keep in mind that that's the biggest challenge we're facing. That's the piece we can't lose sight of, is that we cannot, and I don't think there's any subjectivity in that side of it, is we don't want to allow development to be happening in unsafe spaces. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor French?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Herford. I feel that this is definitely ready for second reading, and I'm keen to hear public feedback as we go into the public hearing.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill?
Yeah, thanks. I think I've had hesitation about this, and it's partly just feeling a bit frustrated with where we've ended up with some accessibility things through DPA. But sort of on reflection and examination, I think I'm looking for a DPA to go further than maybe a DPA is equipped to. So I think I appreciate the clarification and direction added to the DPA, taking it as far as it can go. And maybe it is now to advocate, maybe we need to look at also what's in our zoning or subdivision control in terms of some of these things, rather than try and fix it or more wholesomely address it through the DPA. So I think maybe the DPA has gone as far as it can go, and I'm sort of appreciate what's there. And so in that context, will support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Oh, Councillor Stoner, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. This is an important piece of policy work that has finally come to fruition. And I want to thank staff and some consultant support in providing us the technical details to get us to this point. It is a technical development permit guideline, so I think the proposal for it to be delegated to staff makes good sense. We have always known that there are trade-offs in developing in the hillside and steep slopes, and I think that as presented in second reading here, this provides some good guidance for future developers in these steeper slopes and helps to protect neighboring properties, life safety, and some of those core components, as well as wrestling with the components of accessibility and transportation in these regions. So I look forward to hearing from community when this gets to public hearing. Thanks.
Thank you. Happy to support this moving forward. I also agree that having something as technical as this DPA delegated to staff makes good sense. The comment around developing on steep slopes is inherently challenging to meet your active transportation and mode shift goals. I think I appreciate that. I think as I think Councillor Pettingill was alluding to, OCP policy and zoning and so on should really dig into what that means. But when things get to the level of needing a development permit, then I think we've got reasonable measures in here. Yeah, that having said that, I think this is appropriate, but there is that other work that we need to, I think, the community will need to grapple with over time, especially on the back of the rather stark messages in our transportation master plan around how we move around our community into the future. But for the context of this discussion, I'm happy to move this forward, and thank you for addressing the council feedback from last time, and that makes it very easy to support. So thank you. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay. Next up, we have the consideration of first, second, and third reading. This is the District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200-2011 amendment bylaw for Hunter Place. And this is for consideration of additional rental residential. I'll turn it over to staff when they're ready.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Aisha Phil, planner with Community Development.
Oh, we're doing that. I'm Jessie Fletcher, Acting Director of Community Development.
Tonight, we're presenting a rezoning application for 1100, 1120, and 1140 Hunter Place for consideration of first three readings. The primary request of the application is to convert 10% of the gross floor area of the project from office space to rental residential space. The subject property is located in downtown Squamish. It has double frontage on both Hunter Place and Pemberton Avenue. It's also adjacent to the rail line and the Mamquam Blind Channel. It's designated as mixed employment in the official community plan. The subject property was rezoned to a comprehensive development zone, CD 99, in 2022 to allow for a mixed-use development that mostly consisted of buildings with commercial space at grade and residential units above, but also included an office building fronting Pemberton Avenue, as shown highlighted here in red. As part of the original 2022 rezoning, the applicant committed to providing a minimum of 30% of the total gross floor area of the overall development as employment space. And breaking this down further, 18% was planned as office and 12% as commercial retail unit or CRU space. The rezoning application proposes to convert 10% of the gross floor area from the original rezoning from office space to rental residential space. This would decrease the overall employment space in the project from 30% down to 20%. The application proposes to allocate 15% of the converted office floor area to affordable rental and 85% to market rental, which would result in an additional 18 units of affordable rental and 25 units of market rental. Several amendments to the CD99 zone are proposed to facilitate this conversion, including removing the office building restriction to the southeast corner of the site, increasing the maximum residential density from 1.19 FAR to 1.36 FAR, and adding a 20% employment space requirement into the zone. The image shown here highlights the replacement of the office space with for sale condo units in the red building fronting Pemberton, and the replacement of for sale condo units with a mix of affordable and market rental units in the green highlighted building fronting Hunter Place. Staff are supportive of the conversion of 10% of the employment space to rental housing, given our continued decline in office space demand and new office space construction, and our continued housing need, with low rental housing vacancy rate and a high housing demand. The applicant's proposed 20% employment space percentage is in line with other recent mixed-use developments in the district, as well as with our downtown commercial, or C4 zone. Lastly, the applicant has offered to increase their affordable housing commitment from 11% to 15% of the total number of residential units, which aligns with the district's rezoning application alignment with official community plan policy. The rezoning application also requests that light industrial, senior care facility, and tourist accommodation be added to the list of permitted uses in the CD99 zone to allow for a broader range of businesses to go into the employment spaces in this development. Other minor updates proposed for the CD99 zone include decreasing the maximum height for principal buildings from 30 meters down to 26.5 meters, as well as adding in an 18-meter grade to uppermost floor level restriction to align with the district's informal maximum building height policy. Minimum lot size is proposed to be reduced to facilitate future potential subdivision of individual buildings on the development site. Maximum lot coverage and minimum setbacks have been clarified in the zone. Class B bicycle parking and interconnected parkade clauses are proposed to be removed to ensure that our bicycle parking for the development is aligned with our current standards and to simplify interpretation in the CD99 zone. And finally, the CD99 site plan figures and references have been updated to align with the current proposed development plans. The original land development agreement is proposed to be updated to align with the phasing change from 3-phase down to 2 phases. Other key changes include increasing the affordable rental housing commitment to 15% of the total number of residential units, securing 8% of the total number of residential units as market rental, securing a financial contribution to a car share co-op to fund car share memberships for the residents of the affordable units, removing all office building related and associated bicycle parking clauses, and lastly, securing additional infrastructure works to address district needs in the nearby area. The rezoning application is aligned with official community plan policies in the diverse and affordable housing section, as well as our mixed employment land use designation. Conversion of 10% of the employment space in this development to rental residential will improve project viability to proceed to construction to deliver the 43 units of affordable rental housing, a dedicated childcare facility, and previously negotiated in-kind CAC benefits to the community, which are all listed on the slide here. To inform the community per policy, the rezoning application was posted to the district's development review map. A development sign was posted at the site. No public comments have been received and no project information meeting was held. In accordance with provincial housing legislation, local governments are prohibited from holding public hearings related to rezoning applications for developments that are primarily residential and are consistent with the OCP, and this project meets these requirements. So based on the rationale outlined in the presentation, staff are recommending that zoning amendment bylaw number 3230 be given first, second, and third reading and that council authorize amendments to the land development agreement to secure the items A through E listed here. Staff also recommend that prior to adoption, an updated flood hazard covenant be registered on title and the traffic impact assessment from the original rezoning be updated. With that, I'll pass it back to the chair for questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council. Go ahead, Councillor French, then Pettingill.
Thanks, Mayor Herford. I'm curious about the fiber conduit that the district is requiring from Pembroke Avenue to Hunter Place through the site. In my 8-ish years of doing this, I don't recall anything like this in any other development proposal. So how does the district benefit from this conduit right of way?
Yep. Through the chair, it's the actual installation of the conduit itself. And this would be, so the district has a fiber network plan for district wide. And part of the plan has a connection adjacent to this site. So we're taking advantage of this development to get that portion of the conduit pre-installed. So it's a piece of the larger network that is meant to serve district infrastructure and our facilities and create redundancy in the fiber network.
Okay, so that sounds to me like this would be a future consideration situation as opposed to it would be put into immediate use.
Through the chair, correct. It would be for future connectivity, and we're taking advantage to get a piece done in association with this development.
Okay, great. And I have one more, Mayor Herford. The list of permitted use is no longer, so being removed includes fitness center. And I'd like to hear the rationale behind deleting fitness centers from the list of uses.
Yep, through the chair, this is more of a housekeeping item. The district overall introduced indoor recreation as the umbrella, and gyms and fitness center fit within that. Indoor recreation is already a permitted use in this zone, so it's actually capturing it. So we're just cleaning that up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, the removal of the bicycle parking to rely on more general regulations, is that a net increase or decrease or no change in the type and number of bicycle spots?
Through the chair, it's a net increase because our standards increased in between when this rezoning was completed.
Okay, and the childcare, I think that was a requirement before. Has the size of the childcare space increased corresponding to the amount of additional residential?
Through the chair, the size has stayed the same through the process.
Okay, and then staff spoke to, the lack of office demand and ongoing housing demand. If I'm correct, that refers to sort of immediate short-term demand, which I understand is a pressure for developers. In terms of district assessment of long-term community needs, like over 25 years, how are we weighing or assessing that?
Through the chair, could you elaborate on this line of questioning?
Well, I guess in my mind, if we respond to immediate residential demand, then we could have 100% residential, no employment, and everyone on the highway, everyone in cars. We're not meeting our mode shift goals, et cetera, et cetera. We know with the housing growth and the mode shift and all those things required, we need a lot of employment. We need to match employment, I think, over the long term to housing. And so even if in the short term, there's not this immediate market demand for these things, we need to make sure that we're pacing these things together overall, I think. And so I'm wondering how we are balancing that sort of long-term need and demand versus the sort of short-term developer demand or wish.
Through the chair, this might be a little bit beyond the scope of this particular application to address. The staff rationale for recommending the 3 readings was based on the housing needs reports, past housing trends that we've been monitoring, vacancy rates that we've been monitoring. So it's not necessarily coupled with the 25-year out view of where housing is at in relation to employment space.
Okay, I'll leave that there. I think I'm starting to get into questions for council, but I wanted to check if there was some sort of analysis of that. The last thing I have then, in some of the language in the previous, it speaks to no gas covenant for all uses, including ground floor retail. But we are changing uses and adding uses, and some of the ground floor won't necessarily be retail. And there's other parts in the document where it just says general no gas covenant for the whole thing. So can I clarify for all the spaces in this new, what is the expectations on no gas? Is it no gas covenant, all spaces, all uses?
Through the chair, correct.
Thank you. On the tourist accommodation piece, this, and that would only apply to the commercial spaces, not to any of these residential spaces that were either already existed in the zone or that we're contemplating adding at this point. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct. Tourist accommodation is considered a commercial use and employment space.
Okay. Okay. Council, other questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. This is more of a general question than a question specific to this. What's the difference between a rezoning and an amendment to a zoning?
Through the chair, that's semantics. They're the same thing.
So how does this current rezoning application compare with the DCC, the current ACC and DCC requirements for the municipality? If you were to take this as a brand new zoning application for this lot, how would the ACC and DCC requirements look compared to the requirements for the offer on table?
Through the chair, ACCs and DCCs are paid at the time of and calculated at the time of building permit. So whatever's submitted by the applicant for the building permit is how we'll calculate those charges.
So will this development be subject to current ACCs and DCCs?
Yeah, sure that then. Through the chair, the current development would not be subject to ACCs given the existing land development agreement, unless the ACC bylaw were updated at some point, in which case they still have a 1-year window in which it would not apply similar to the DCC bylaw. They have a 1-year window from the adoption of the most recent DCC bylaw to get a building permit in order to have the old rates, but otherwise they would be subject to the new rates. Likely they will be subject to the new rates for the DCC bylaw.
Okay, so did I hear that correctly? They will likely be subject to the new DCC rates, correct?
Correct.
And ACC?
Through the chair, they are unlikely to be subject to the ACC bylaw.
And that is due to the land development agreement?
Correct. And also the first ACC bylaw, no applications with a precursor application are subject to it unless the ACC bylaw is updated.
Okay, so so that was my question on a rezoning amendment, a rezoning or an amendment. If the difference between a rezoning and a rezoning amendment is, and a zoning amendment is simply semantics, then this is a rezoning and it is a new application and should be subject to ACCs. Do I misunderstand something?
Yeah, it has to do with that precursor application. So this rezoning application that's before you today was submitted in October prior to the adoption of the ACC bylaw. So they are exempt from ACCs per the legislation.
Okay, this amendment was received before the adoption. Thanks.
So that semantics piece doesn't have any material change in the fees paid or anything like that, which is what we were just exploring. Is that fair assessment? Whether it's a whether it's a rezoning or an amendment?
Just a point of clarification for ACCs and DCCs. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Stoner. Sorry, I missed you.
All good. Thank you. Through the chair, a few questions to build on previous ones. So just picking off where Councillor Hamilton picked up. If I look at table 2 in the staff report and I do the math, it looks to me that there's an extra 25 market sale units being made available. Is my math there correct? We have 284 residential units in the current proposed and 216 previously. There's only 18 new affordable and 25 new market rental, which leaves a gap of 25 market sale.
Through the chair, I'd have to double check your math, but I think that's correct. And it's like a difference between unit demising versus overall GFA. So to clarify, the original rezoning, there has been no increase in the for sale condo GFA. They may have increased the number of units by demising that GFA differently between the previous rezoning and this new rezoning.
Okay, but the GFA hasn't changed, so that's why the CAC calculations haven't changed.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. I will reflect on that a little bit. And then I think maybe to turn Councillor Pettingill's previous comments into a question, was there any discussion and or exploration of a sunset clause in this land development agreement, given the priority of advancing something now for rental and affordable housing, and that being a need now and not in 5 or 10 years?
Through the chair, there hasn't been discussion of a sunset clause. This applicant has also paid their CAC cash contribution already. And so we're essentially kind of locked into this current land development agreement.
The land development agreement says the CAC won't be collected until DP issuance, and the staff report says the issuance has been delayed.
Sorry, through the chair, I'd need a timeout to double check that.
Yeah, fair enough. But if it also hasn't been discussed, then that answers my question. And then I was just curious about the phasing. So one of the purported benefits here is to provide more housing, specifically rental and affordable, which is definitely an identified need by all of us in our community. But it's broken out and it seems most of it's coming in parcel 2, but the LDA doesn't actually say which phase needs to be built first. And so how do we, is there any assurance that we can get more of the affordable housing built sooner than what feels like currently is a big question mark as to what gets built when?
Through the chair, that's at council's discretion to determine. The applicant has said that they have not decided whether to build phase 1 or phase 2 first. Phase 2 would be more straightforward to build because they do not need to raise the road like they do on Pemberton, but they are unsure which would proceed. There are 8 units secured in phase 1 for affordable housing. And that was true for the original rezoning as well. Or maybe there was 7 and they increased it by 1.
Yeah, okay, thanks for that clarification. And then my last question was just around the one of the minor updates around the reduction of a minimum lot size for subdivision. I'm just wondering if you can further explain the rationale for that. it feels like something that we've actually tried to reduce the ability to subdivide lots like this. So I'm just curious why we would reduce the size.
Yeah, my understanding and through discussion with the developer is that the intent is that they could potentially subdivide off building 2.2 from the rest of the development. So the building on Hunter with the rent with 100% rental in that, in order to get different financing, and then they wouldn't be stymied to access that rental housing financing with the rest of the development attached to it.
So I'm through this. I've got Councillor Pettingill next. We heard an offer for a timeout to get an answer to a question. I would like that answer. I don't, and then so I think I'll entertain. I think we should ask a couple more questions just to see if there's anything else that should be addressed during the timeout. But I don't want to lose the thread on that. I'm going to go to Councillor Pettingill next, and I'll come over to you, Councillor Hamilton, before we do that.
So I think I heard the term demise, which I hadn't heard before in this context, which I think is the gross floor area is the same. There's maybe more units, which in my mind necessarily means it's more smaller units. Was there expectations of unit mix in terms of 2, 3 bedroom and so on? And this is changing that, and maybe I missed that, but can you clarify, are we sort of losing 2 or 3 bedroom and going to more bachelors, or?
Through the chair, I believe in the land development agreement, there's a requirement for a minimum 20% 3-bedroom units, but perhaps we can double check that in our timeout as well.
Okay, you okay with that? Great. I'm going to go to Councillor Hamilton, and then we'll do our timeout.
Yeah, thanks very much. I think I'm struggling with this idea of being locked into the LDA. I recognize that we've signed an LDA, and that LDA is specific to the rezoning application that was approved in 2022. It's an agreement between two parties. If the zoning is changing, it's not clear to me that the LDA doesn't necessarily change as well. And what I'm struggling with is that it's not clear to me that we're not applying old CAC expectations to what is, in my opinion, effectively a new application. So what is the constraint that holds us to the LDA when the application under which that LDA was signed, the applicant has asked to change it? That's I'm not understanding that. So if you could help me understand, that would be helpful.
We're about to go into timeout, so if you'd like to add this to the list of things to consider then, you're welcome to, or if you wish to reply, you can do that as well.
Through the chair, I would clarify that. So if the CAC has been paid, then the land development agreement, as it's written and registered on title, is effectively the applicant has then done part of their agreement and the contract is now active per se. What is on the table today is an amendment to the zone, and with that, an amendment to the land development agreement, both the applicant and council would have to agree to both would have to agree to changes to the LDA, and of course, council would have full discretion to approve or deny the rezoning as it is. And so that would be the scope of your power as it relates to the LDA.
We're going to go into a timeout so we can ponder that over that time and pick up this conversation then. Is 10 minutes? Let's take 10 minutes. We're going to, so we'll recess the meeting and reconvene at 7:45. Thank you. Okay, I'll call the meeting back to order. We're just back from a short timeout, and I will turn it over to staff.
Through the chair, I'll clarify, the CACs have not yet been paid. So that was my mistake, and I got that confused with another application from this developer. And whether the LDA has secured unit sizes, the CD zone itself secures 20%, a minimum 20% 3-bedroom units. So that's in the actual CD zone. And then it's kind of belt and suspender to the LDA, which says that the affordable housing must be a minimum 20% of 3-bedroom units. And I'll pass it to Jesse Fletcher to, oh, okay. Yeah.
So the genesis of the question around the payment of the CACs was around why, or the relevance of the existing LDA in a rezoning of a property. And so just how does that, so if the CACs haven't been paid, where does that leave us? And is it beneficial to be where, maybe it is beneficial to be where we are and have the current LDA, apply, or should something else regulate the things that the LDA regulates?
Yeah, through the chair, some additional background on this. So this site was previously split zone between C4 and I1. So a portion of the site already had kind of the C4 density associated to it. The CAC that was negotiated in that original rezoning exceeded the policy of the day. And this current rezoning application meets our current affordable housing targets in our current CAC policy.
Okay, in our current ACC policy wouldn't apply, or ACC bylaw, sorry, would not apply to this application because of the time of when it came in. LDA issues aside, just from a timing perspective and legislative requirements. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Council, sorry, I was asking questions that were following up on other people's questions. Did those, anything remaining, Councillor Pettingill?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, and maybe I mentioned 3-bedroom, but I meant that as an example. So I want to clarify, the LDA and other sort of documents on this only specified a 3-bedroom requirement, and nothing was silent on 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, and bachelor.
Through the chair, correct. The only other thing it spoke to was adaptable dwelling units, and there's a minimum requirement for 10% adaptable in the zone.
And that's a unit count, not GFA. Okay. Other questions? Okay, I think we're ready for a motion, Council. We have the staff recommendation before us, or if someone has an alternative to that. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, I'll move the alternative recommendation. So the District of Squamish provide first and second reading with the following items to be addressed prior to third reading. And that is 2 bullet points, one being a sunset clause added to the land development agreement on the additional the additional residential gross floor area. And the second point being additional clarity, bring forward more of the affordable housing units in the first phase of development. If it's seconded, I'll speak to it.
Councillor Pettingill, you're seconding? Yep, go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thank you. I know that when we discussed this at a high level in terms of a number of the applicants that were interested in rezoning some of the employment space given the current market conditions, I was pretty clear that I had little appetite for it unless there was a demonstrable benefit to our community, and it delivered on our housing needs now, not 10 years from now. So without a sunset clause in this LDA, it's not supportable to me, as well as adjusting the affordable housing component, ensuring that gets delivered earlier on in the phasing and securing that in some way. And so that's the only thing that would make this supportable for me. Otherwise, I'm happy to kill the application as presented. Thanks.
Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, I think this is better than the staff recommendation. I'm not sure I'm quite there. I may not even be able to support this. Definitely can't support the main recommendation. For me, staff asked us about the policy around employment space, and I think we did say, we'll look at these as a one-off, considering the many factors. But every time this has come forward, I think it's come forward with the explanation, which we sort of already rejected at our discussion, that the fact that office isn't moving right at this moment isn't a valid justification to build all residential. I think we do need to match the residential with employment. It doesn't have to be office. So if this was coming back with other employment on the site, I could work with that. So it's not specific to office. But I think, we can't be in a place where we just ignore all the other challenges we're facing. We have to solve housing in concert with employment and all those other things that make this a livable, walkable community. And, providing affordable housing to Vancouver commuters isn't really addressing Squamish's challenges. And I'm not hearing people sort of demand that we just provide housing without the employment and walkability and everything that goes along with that. So, the sunset clause makes this a little better, but I'm not sure I'm there yet.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, question for the mover. Did you have a timeline in mind for that sunset?
I have a preferred timeline. I recognize that this is something that needs to go back and be negotiated with the developer. And so I am not going to put something in a motion, but anything longer than 5 years, I don't think is supportable from my perspective. And I'm happy to hear from my council colleagues on that.
Thank you. Would you like to make a comment on that at this point? Councillor Greenlaw?
Yeah, just wanted to kind of echo some of the comments that my colleagues have made. I think a 5-year sunset clause sounds reasonable. I mean, we've started putting in the reports, like I think a couple of years ago, we started putting in the reports the amount of housing this represents in terms of the housing needs assessment. And this one is 41%, but we don't have a cumulative number there. And it's also just like, yeah, if this housing is going to be built in 10 years, that's very different from housing that's going to be built within 3. Like, to me, it's important to keep those metrics making sense. And then the other piece is, I think Councillor Pettingill makes a really good point. There's a lot of reasons why our commercial spaces are vacant right now, and it's not necessarily just because of a lack of desire to be in them. So it's really important that we continue to build these spaces to have jobs in our community, because, to Councillor Pettingill's point, we run the very real risk of creating a bedroom community when we want to be kind of a thriving, functional community on our own. So I'm in support of this motion. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. I will not be supporting this motion for the reason that I think that the topic of sunset clauses deserves an examination from a policy perspective and how and where and why we would apply them. It may be that sunset clauses in some cases, and maybe this one, can be counterproductive relative to our goals of facilitating supply of affordable housing units. I'd like to hear and learn more from the perspective of investors. And I would wish to also, because in my experience, some housing development investors, including some that have been here with us for a while in this community, are quite articulate with their concerns regarding sunset clauses. They may be different instances, different situations, but I would prefer to see a policy review focused on the topic of sunset clauses. Otherwise, regarding the main application proposal here relative to office space, I think that it is healthy for us to be ready to be flexible and adaptive on this topic. We have this project with its housing units and other features. I would like to see it proceed. The employment, with respect to employment space, I think that we shouldn't overlook that the real local demand is less for office space than industrial, in different categories of industrial. That's the real pressing demand in this community. So I do share Councillor Pettingill's concerns, also articulated by Councillor Stoner, about encouraging a balance between housing and local jobs. Finally, this wasn't a topic that came up during the 2022 public hearing where we were focused on other matters, Pemberton Avenue, and raising it for one thing. But there happens to be on this property one of the most valuable heritage buildings in the community. It is due to its age. It's the House Sound Timber Building. It's due to its age, its solid cedar construction, its condition, and its associations, and its potential for reuse. There are 3 nonprofit organizations interested to have the building relocated and make use of it at another location. Eventually, one day, we are going to catch up with a heritage building strategy. But I just couldn't resist pointing this out. It was missed in our review of this development proposal hitherto. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks very much. So the switch from employment to residential space, I'm just not in favor of. I think that we have a responsibility to make plans to develop a complete community, because and that's where these numbers, these 30% our employment requirements come from. And when we have applications, particularly, and I've mentioned this in other contexts, and a rezoning that has very recently been approved, and then to come back with an adjustment purely based on the financial requirement that offices are slightly harder, financially harder to build, residences are easier to build. And so just a few years after you get your rezoning, come in and try to shift over to residential. We are, these applications are coming with challenging, if not complex, legal changes in land development agreements, questions about whether we're applying the amenity contributions of the day. If we applied, and I know that there's probably, I'm sure I've not done this calculation quite right, but with a 284 unit count and $10,000 per unit amenity cost charge is $2.8 million in ACCs, as opposed to the amount of CACs that are being applied here. So I think that when applicants come for rezoning, they're coming for a full rezoning, not a slight shift from one thing to another. In that, I won't support the motion on the floor. Thanks.
Thank you. We asked the question specifically earlier around if the ACCs apply, just from a timing perspective. I just want to make sure that we're clear as to why they don't apply. But
I got it. Yep.
Okay. This one's really challenging for me. I think we hear the challenges around office. We know the needs in community, so I could view this as a response to the needs in community. I think that, but I'm struggling to do that combined with the addition of the. I know that the discussion around sunset clause. I know sunset clauses have been a challenging topic previously. What I'm looking to secure, and I believe the intent of the sunset clause as the mechanism to do so is to ensure that if we make this concession now based on the needs of today, that it stands a chance of addressing the needs of today by coming to fruition in a reasonable timeline. So we're saying sunset clause. Could be a way to address that. I'm looking for a commitment that if we take this trade-off, this is action exchange that's going to happen in a reasonable amount of time to address community needs. Because by the time, if this sits for a decade or two and then moves forward, the needs of community may be vastly different, and we may have given away the opportunity to for that council today to address that. So that's what I'm looking for with this. Sunset clause is one mechanism. If staff comes back and says sunset clause won't work, but we'll do this other thing to ensure that it happens, that would be supportable from my perspective. The light industrial use being added to the definition of the zone, to me, feels like that's facilitating that site sitting and being used for an industrial use until such time as a development occurs. I don't see how industrial use occurs in the final development, which is on top of a giant parkade. I just don't see that. The tourist accommodation addition, I think, is interesting, although maybe shifting the office to tourist accommodation would have been an easier thing to grapple with from my perspective, to ensure that it's still, if not it's not the highest density employment, but we know it's good for our touristic economy here. So I'll support this at this touch point. I don't know if it's in doing this that this council is going to get this back, or if it's going to bleed over into the next term. But I do think there's some more work to be done on this to make it palatable to council clearly. So I'll support this at this point, and we'll see how it looks when it comes back as to if it gets its full support at that time. And with that, I will call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Councillor French, Anderson, and Hamilton oppose. Motion carries. Thank you. Now we're on to some adoptions, and as is our common practice, we do not have a presentation associated with these. So I'll be looking for council to help move these forward. We've got the first one is the zoning bylaw around the oceanfront. Actually, these are both have to do with oceanfront lot O density clarification. I will move the first one. Councillor French moves seconds. All in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Pettingill opposes. Motion carries. You want to move the second one, Councillor French? I foreshadowed that for you. So Councillor Hamilton seconds. All in favor? And opposed? Councillor Pettingill opposes. Motion carries. Thank you. Let's take another quick break, and then we'll go to, when we come back, we'll be on community agreements policy implementation update. As believe it or not, we find ourselves slightly ahead of schedule. So we'll take a 9-minute break to return to our scheduled time at 8:15 for this item. Thank you. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. We're on item 8A1, the Community Agreements Policy Implementation Update. And I'll turn over to staff to introduce themselves and the topic.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Patricia Ng, Economic Development Officer, and joined here by Julie Wengi, General Manager of Corporate Services. Today's purpose is to update Council on the implementation status of the Community Agreements Policy. Next slide, please. Addressing the April 14th, oh, I can do it, thank you, sorry, 2026, April 14th, 2026 motion that Council direct staff to provide an update on the status of implementation of the Community Agreements Policy and advise whether it is possible to implement the policy for the 2027 budget. Okay. The Community Agreements Policy, or CAP, was adopted by Council on March 25th, 2025, at which time the Community Partnership Policy was rescinded, and the amended, renamed Community Grants Policy, or CGP, was approved. In the 2026 to 2035 financial plan, the 3 operating agreements previously funded through the CGP were removed from the program and added to the departmental operating budgets. As the CGP budget is set at 1% of the prior year's taxation, and the 3 agreements made up approximately 0.4%, the CGP budget was temporarily reduced to 0.6% of prior year's taxation to minimize tax impact. In the 2027 to 2036 financial plan, the CGP will continue to be 0.6% of prior year's taxation and is proposed to be increased gradually starting in 2028 through service level changes funded by taxation, reestablishing the CGP budget to 1% of prior year's taxation by 2031. Council directed further increases to the 3 operating agreements, as well as the 8 other existing agreements, will be reflected as service level changes funded by taxation for Council consideration during the financial planning process. This is an overview of the CAP implementation timeline over the next few years. This phased approach is designed to support the development, refinement, and operationalization of the CAP process during its early implementation years. 2026 is about building and piloting the community-initiated process through inviting the 11 existing agreement holders who are proposed to have agreements that will be due in 2028 to submit their CAP projects by September 30th, 2026, many of which staff anticipate will be multi-year proposals. In fall of 2027, the plan is to open the community initiative process for new intakes to the whole community for consideration in the 2029 financial plan while building the district initiated process. In 2028, staff will add the district initiated process for consideration in the 2030 financial plan. Throughout the process, staff will be communicating and educating district staff and the community on CAP and look to implement continuous improvement opportunities. On December 16th, 2025, Council approved a new Community Partnerships Coordinator role to be included in the draft 2026 to 2035 financial plan to implement and operationalize the CAP. This role has been filled and the coordinator started at the end of April 2026. These lists show the activities that have been completed, in progress, and are planned for 2026 to operationalize and implement the CAP. The activities completed to date include finalizing the process and building out the tools to support execution of the process internally and externally. Activities in progress is to educate staff and existing community organizations that the district collaborates with today on the policy and process. Upcoming activities include preparing the structures, people, and tools required to review submitted CAP proposals and create approved agreements. This slide shows the required timeline for project submission and evaluation in compliance with CAP. The timeline does not allow for CAP to be implemented in the 2027 financial planning year, as proposal submissions would have had to have occurred in 2025 to be considered during the 2027 to 2036 financial plan budgeting process, which is currently underway. The integrity of the CAP relies on the evaluation of all project proposals collectively through an evaluation panel using consistent evaluation criteria, developing metrics and benchmarks to measure project community impact, and presenting all evaluated agreements to council collectively. This approach enables more effective strategic decision-making, prioritization, and fair resource allocation for the district. I'll turn it over to the chair for any questions.
Thank you. Council, questions about from the presentation or the supporting report? Councillor Anderson?
Yes, this is really a matter of clarification, perhaps. Throughout the material we have before us in the policy document, the guiding principles and the criteria for evaluation of proposals, there's reference to alignment with master plans. Now, if I go to the district's page on master plans and strategies, I'm a little bit confused. And my question is, do master plans, as we read in the policy, apply to all of those strategies? And it's doubly confusing because in both columns, you've got master plans and strategies, and then you have another column that has strategies. Heritage management's in one, arts, cultural, and heritage is in another. So it's a little bit confusing, and it might be for community groups that are looking to see what's ahead of them in looking to apply themselves to the program. So could you clarify whether by master plan you are also referring to strategies and the full list of strategies that appears on the district webpage?
Through the chair, yes, the master plans and strategies webpage, we are directing community organizations to look through that list so that they can help align themselves with district priorities as stated in master plans and strategies. And also to be looking at the strategic plan is another document, and the official community plan as well.
Thank you. So you've alleviated my concern that strategies are considered as master plans for the purposes of the community agreements policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stoner?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, I was unclear if the 11 active agreements that are listed in attachment 2, do those all come up for renewal in like 2026? Are we looking for a 1-year extension? Or are we expecting them all to apply in the same year despite where they might be in their agreement?
Through the chair, the 11 existing agreements are all year-to-year agreements. So in 2026, they are going to be proposed to be extended for the 2027 financial year. And they will be invited in 2 weeks' time to submit a project idea by September 30th of this year to be considered in the 2028 10-year financial plan.
Seems like a big ask for those organizations to submit something a year in advance, like 14 months in advance from when their budget is up, without even knowing if they have certainty for their 2027 budget. So how is this a fair process for our partner organizations?
Through the chair, Julie Vengi, General Manager of Corporate Services. It is my understanding that all of those 11 active agreements are currently going to be proposed to be renewed for 1 year in the 2027 budget period. So there, if that was approved by council, they would have that 1 year roll over, and then during the same time period, they would also be submitting their proposals for the multi-year, if it is multi-year agreements, going forward under the cap.
But again, these are mostly volunteer-run organizations. We're asking them to submit multi-year proposals 14 months in advance before they even have certainty in their next year. Like, we haven't approved our 2027 budget. It feels like a huge ask to give them 2 months' notice to give us a multi-year budget in 8 weeks' time without having certainty that they have funding in 2027.
Through the chair, thanks for the question. Jay Dale, Director of Recreation and Culture. I brought the community agreements policy for endorsement, so just providing some context, historical context that may help. Some of these groups have already been lobbying for multi-year agreements and provided even figures and recommendations for what the dollar value looks like for multi-year agreements. So this work has been ongoing for some organizations already. So it's not too much to ask some of these organizations who have been hoping for this and planning for this for multiple years. In addition, not all organizations, some may not be requesting multi-years of funding. They may want to continue on an annual basis. It's up to them. And what we've seen so far with some of the organizations is a lot of the numbers are based on like inflationary costs. So yeah, there's some type of formula that they've generally applied. So this isn't a perfect science, and because the agreements wouldn't be approved until I guess 2 years from now, there's time for likely adjustments as well or review from council. But yeah, there's been a few different processes to support groups.
So just to seek clarity, which of these 11 agreements have actively requested multi-year agreements at this time?
Through the chair, thanks for the question. We've been Squamish Arts has indicated multi-year funding requests. I believe we've had requests from Sorka as well. Those are the two that are top of mind. The rest we'd have to come back and confirm exactly who submitted multi-year requests already.
Councillor Penningill, any questions?
Yeah, start here. So is this sort of a one-time as we get this rolling where there's a 2-year, a 2-year wait for a decision, or is this sort of, it is the fundamental design of the CAP process that all of them or all of them above 75,000 will always take more than a year, maybe up to 2 years to get a decision when there's an application?
Through the chair, this will be the process every year, and we will look to this year and next year to learn if there are adjustments that should be made. But based on CAP and the process to ensure that there is a consistent evaluation framework and process that every organization goes through, it's a bit small here, but you can see that there are various stages that need to happen for reviews. And so the September timeframe to submit a project idea, and between October and December, we have an evaluation panel that will review the project submissions and ensure that we have technical reviewers looking at whether or not the ask is viable and what sort of supports can be provided from the district side and other organizations. And then there will be interviews that happen. So that's October to December timeframe. Then from there, there's an evaluation made to then be able to put together reports to either go to council or for the delegated authority to make a decision of what to recommend within the financial plan. And that will be in the January to March timeframe of the following year. And then following that is when the initial input into the draft financial plan will happen from staff. That then takes us through the financial planning process with the workshops with council from September to December to then have the approval of the financial plan. And if it is adopted, the approved agreements will be drafted in December and January. So to ensure that we have the full process that's consistent and fair, and to do our due diligence, it does take that time frame.
Okay, I think I am finding a challenge with that. Like part of this is meant to make this sort of accessible and easy, and to see these like it does feel like a big barrier for a volunteer organization for it to be up to a 2-year process to have a decision. I understand the diligence we want to do, but I'll leave that for now. Just wanting to understand the funding available. As I read the report, we started off with 1 year of prior tax. We moved 0.4% into departments where some of these were being handled, so that left us with 0.6. We are now moving everyone back into the CGP envelope and building that back up to 1. But we are anticipating more participants, and yet the net funding is not increasing overall. We've moved stuff around back and forth, but the total, I think, is not increasing. So does that mean our current financial plan in all of this actually results in no net increase in funding, but we are expecting a net increase in applications or demand?
Through the chair, so talking about two separate streams. One, the stream we're talking about in moving the money back into the CGP is to reimburse, get that fund back up to the 1% it was at. So that's the budgeting that will, the 1% every year that will go back into that. So that's one service level change that will take place. The other service level change that will take place if those agreements, those existing agreements within the department operating budgets are approved and are approved with increases, will be a separate service level change that will come to the budget as well. So you will see 2 requests for service level changes, one to increase the CGP back up to its original level, and the second for any of the agreements that come forward with increased funding requests.
Thank you for that. Is the idea that the smaller, simpler asks may be eligible for this grant program that we're also funding, like that, and then the community? I'm just trying to understand sort of the scope of which, what type of ask goes to which, is best addressed by which stream. Is that kind of how staff's thinking about this?
Through the chair, thanks for the question. So the CGP, which is the community enhancement, or which is our grant provision, supports 2 community granting organizations, Squamish Community Foundation, Squamish Arts. They both distribute various grants for the community based on the scope of the grants that we've established. So those will remain the same. Those are our 2 organizations. And then the community agreements policy is supporting intakes that come through departmental budgets and through approval through the financial plan process. So totally separate and a part of the operating budget.
Okay. The slide that you showed, I'll come back to you, Councillor Penigo. The slide that you showed for the process had the caveat of under a certain threshold. Is there a similar graph for the above that threshold that we should just be aware of as we interact with this? Then I'll go back to you, Councillor Pettingill.
Through the chair, yes. This is the slide for what we're calling tier 2, so over $75,000 project ideas and above. It is still the same time frame. The addition are the 2 circled process items, which is to ask for additional information if required, and asking the community organization to provide an updated project submission if needed. But it will follow the same 15-month timeframe from ask to approval.
And the dollar value is one threshold. Is the number of years play into this at all? Or this would be for a 1 year would have the same process as a I don't know, a 5-year, whatever the maximum term would be.
It will be for the total project value of, we'll look at it if it's 5 years or 1 year. If it's over 75,000, then it follows this process just with this additional step of asking for additional information if required.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pettingill.
And so just to clarify, this timeframe we're talking about applies to community initiated, not district initiated. So community initiated above 75, below 75, where it doesn't meet the ones delegated to Community Foundation or Squamish Arts, which they seem to max out often at 10,000. So there's a rough gap between 10,000 and 75 where you would still fall into this longer process.
Through the chair, thanks for the question. I think there's 2 different pots we're speaking to. So the community agreements policy will not have interaction with the community grants policy, which is the community grants provision fund. Anything, these are proposals from the community that are not grant requests through our community granting organizations. So they're totally independent of anything to do with Squamish Arts or Squamish Community Foundation and directed directly at the district.
My understanding, though, was that sort of one of the first checkpoints was, is this more appropriate for the Community Foundation or Squamish Arts program? If so, they'd be directed that way. If it's sort of not valid for that program, then it would fall into this, which probably then becomes a dollar value because the criteria seem to be similar-ish. So this is really sort of you're above the Community Foundation, Squamish Arts process that puts you into this process, which is quite likely, could very well be below 75, but it's a little above their thresholds.
Through the chair, thanks for the question. So a part of the community education and process for staff is to educate the community on the opportunities that they have for funding. So through public communication and through our community partnerships coordinator, they will be articulating these opportunities through Squamish Community Foundation, Squamish Arts, regardless of the amount. The amount would just have to fit the criteria of the grants that they issue. And if those are not a fit, then they could submit an idea for the community agreements policy process.
If I may add, the community agreements policy is focused on entering into fee-for-service, operating, and capital agreements, and that may be a more high-level distinction between the grants offered through this EGP compared to CAP.
Okay, and then just to clarify, because one of the rationales for this is that we want to consider a panel to consider everything together. So does that mean it's not just that the process may take 14 months or 2 years, but our intakes are every other year? Or will we have an annual intake, but it just takes a while to work through the process even with an annual intake?
Through the chair, yes, it's an annual intake.
And if I can just add, understanding the concern around the timelines, just to provide a little bit of clarity on the district's budgeting process. So what happens is that by March of each year, departments are required to submit their budget requests or their budget asks for the next year. So we start in March of the year. So the reason why we then back up the timeline to September of the previous year is we need to provide that timeline for the evaluations to take place before those inputs go into the budget, because we may be considering service level changes which need to be entered into the budget into the budgeting process in March of that year to then be evaluated and considered for the next year's budget.
And if I can add as well, this is a new process for the district. So we're very mindful of making sure we are realistic in, implementing this policy, the evaluation process, and working through this with realistic timelines. In the future, depending on capacity, depending on efficiency, depending on the intake volume, there may be opportunities to reduce that timeline, but it still needs to align with the financial plan timeline, as Julie mentioned, or as Ms. Wingdu mentioned. So there's a limit for sure in terms of how long it'll take, but there's potential as we continue to gather information by implementing this policy.
Yeah, and then I have a speakers list that we need to get through so we can.
So, and the reason why, because we sort of set a budget amount, we would know, like, or we could in theory just sort of set, we've got $700,000 in our financial plan each year for this. And so then, and maybe it's set aside in the year prior. So the money's there in theory. The reason why we can't sort of then use the rest of the year and not have to do this before we start the budget process is because we're anticipating additional staff impacts, and so it has to tie into all the work planning and so on. So it's not just a dollar thing. Is that the reason why?
Through the chair, so I think maybe just to clarify as well, the CGP is the 1% funded grant program that has an actual budget assigned to it. When we move into the caps, we don't have a separate budget for them per se. These will exist within the departmental budgets. So if the agreement goes forward, it would be there for approval by council. If not, it would come out and the increases would go as service level changes as well. So there is no separate funding for the CAP program. This is all within the departmental budgets.
Ms. Glendale.
Thank you. And if I might provide some more clarity, because of that, and because each agreement with a nonprofit through this CAP program would be unique and dependent on what their proposal is, there is no earmarked amount in the budget because we don't budget that way. We don't put money in the budget just in case. And because it aligns with the financial process, it does end up looking like a 15-month process right now. But as Jay said, within the limits of the financial planning timeline, it may get shorter as we work through this new program.
I've got Councillor Stoner, then Hamilton, and just a reminder that we're moving towards receive for information. So if we have some other action out of this, we need to be working towards that. But we do have a substantial amount of work left that we pulled from the consent agenda. So I want to move. I'm going to go to Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thank you to the chair, and appreciate this is a new process for everyone. And I think we're all working through it, and it's been a while to get us here. So I guess I'm curious what flexibility these organizations have in the upcoming budget to ask for increases. I know that there were a few that kind of came to us in the last budget cycle, that some were approved, some were not. But some of these organizations have been on a year-to-year agreement with no increases for multiple years now, waiting for us to sort out this process. And so I'm just curious, have we articulated to them what the opportunity is for asking for increases in this current budget year, or if they've been told that they have to stick with their existing budgets?
Through the chair, I can't confirm the exact amounts or who has requested, but all of the existing agreement holders who are requesting budgets, we have not put any limitations on what they can request. However, staff have been evaluating their requests and putting forward the proposals as they see fit within the budgetary constraints. So there has been no direction that they cannot ask for an increase in the next year.
Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks very much. So the timeline and the process that we're talking about, is this to apply for a pilot agreement or a final agreement? And where do pilot agreements fall into this? Yeah, where do pilot agreements fall into this CAP process timeline?
Through the chair, right now we are envisioning the same process for pilot agreements. For 2026, we are evaluating agreements. We are evaluating submissions from existing community organizations. And so we will see what they put forward, if they're asking for multi-year or single year, and they will go through the process. We anticipate that it will be they will ask for pilot, or they will ask for, it is a pilot agreement if we have not worked with the organization. And there are several criteria within the policy that notes whether or not council or the delegated authority recommends pilot up to 2 years or a multi-year agreement. One of the main considerations is whether or not we have worked with a community organization in the past. And so we anticipate that the current 11 agreement holders that we have today will be proposing multi-year agreements, and that will still be up to delegated authority and council to decide if that is appropriate.
So, yeah, I'm not sure I understood. So I'll try to reiterate what I think I understood. The existing partners, the 11 existing partners, are applying into this process and will sort of grandfather through the pilot agreement process. There will be no pilot agreements for the first 11. We will engage with a multi-year agreement as opposed to a pilot. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, it is anticipated that as we have been working with them previously, they will all not be excluded from, but they won't fall into the pilot process. The one caveat I would have for that is if they are proposing something novel, which we may need to consider under the pilot process.
Okay, great. And so now a new community organization, this is several years from now, to apply to the process, there's sort of an 18-month application process followed by a 2-year test. And during that 2-year test, they'll have to reapply for the multi-year. So 6 months into their 2-year term, they need to reapply. Do I understand that correctly?
Through the chair, thanks for the question. So the pilot agreements can span up to 2 years. They don't have to be 2 years. And they can be foregoed by council. So they don't have to, last that long, and a multi-year agreement can be recommended at a shorter period. So there's, check steps as a pilot to ensure that it's aligning and that we want it to move towards a multi-year agreement, or council does. And that's all outline the process and the policy.
Through the chair, notwithstanding Mr. Deo's answer, I do recognize the concern regarding how short a time period the agreement holder would have to prove their agreements. It is something that, on that note, if council can allow us just to take that back and we can consider that further. At the moment, we are not anticipating being in that situation, so we have a little bit more time to think about that. But that is an excellent point.
Okay, council, this item was meant to be an update, and we'd be looking to receive if we want to provide any other feedback or recommend another touch point. We are unlikely to see it back as this this term, just where we are on most all topics. So be looking for a motion. I see your hand, Councillor Stoner. Over to you.
Yeah, I'll move receipt at this time and speak to it if it's seconded.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton seconds. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to thank staff for bringing this update. I think as the person who moved the original motion to bring back some information here. I appreciate where we're at, and I do really appreciate the update. And as I mentioned, this is a new process for all of us, and it's taking some time. And I'm just cognizant that these are some of our community partners that work so diligently and activate the greatest volunteer numbers in our community and build community cohesion in achieving some of our shared goals. And so I appreciate the rationale that staff have provided in terms of wanting to ensure, as we roll out into this new process, that we provide the fair evaluation at the same time. And given the length of our budget process, that is taking time. I think what I will take away from this, and I hope that our community partners hear, is that there's flexibility in this year in particular, and asks that are coming forward, especially for those partners who have been serving on year-to-year agreements without increases, where scope of work has potentially changed quite significantly while they've waited patiently for us to sort out our own process. And we know that that might not be ideal. They might be applying in 6 months' time for even more money, or less money, or a shorter agreement. But I think what I hope our community partners hear is that we see the good work that they're doing, and they're welcome to continue to ask for what it is that they need, and we will do our due diligence in this year to evaluate those requests on top of evaluating their potential multi-year requests in a few months' time. And so I hope that they don't see it as just aiming all their efforts at the request in 18 months' time, that we can kind of do both and work to make sure that they're well supported for the next 15 months as they prepare applications for longer term agreements. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton, and then Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, thanks very much for the update. And perhaps it's me just struggling with the length of time of municipal budget processes. But the length of time that the process takes from a community organization to come to say, hey, I have this great idea, for us to respond, that's great. Here's an application. We'll see you in a year and a half, maybe. I'm struggling with that. So I sincerely hope we can find efficiencies and find a faster path forward to be able to make decisions and give community agency in doing things that they want to do. Like if a community partner comes and says, I really want to do this thing, saying 18 months before we even consider it is pretty hard. So I hope we can find more efficiencies there. Thanks.
Councillor Anderson.
I'm very excited by this program and the package that's before us. And I'm kind of looking at it from the perspective of potential new users of such opportunities among our nonprofits, for example, in the environment or cultural fields. And I think with respect to the waiting time, these 2-year process, I don't think this might be idle time necessarily, but an opportunity for careful preparation and planning. I think that this package has been very carefully assembled. And I look at the item, for example, activities in progress. development and sharing of a video showcasing exemplary community agreements, continuing to meet with interested community collaborators, continuing community socialization and connection with the new partnerships coordinator. I think this all speaks to I'm very optimistic about the unfolding of this program, and I think a number of groups will look at it very favorably. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, I appreciate the work, and I do understand the complexity and how carefully in the length and because there needs to be public discussion, transparency, and so on into our budget process. So I understand some of the timelines, but I also look, number 6, Squamish Men's Shed Society, the 2026 agreement value is $5,100, and we're talking about a 14-month process. So I think we've collectively have missed something here. I'm not sure at this moment how to address that, but and especially to the degree that some of these don't have significant changes. It's sort of an inflationary increase to something we've been doing for a long time. The fact that that requires a 15-month process as well is pretty challenging. So I'm at a bit of a loss to suggest a solution at this moment, but there's a bit of a challenge here, I think.
Thank you. Any other comments? Speaking in support of the motion to receive, and I found the conversation here, I learned a lot about what the constraints are with the timeline and maybe why others haven't done this before us because of that length of time. But I do think also the opportunities that this presents to both the organization and the community groups, and thus the community overall, are substantial. And one of the pieces in this initial phase of assessment is all those agreements that are maybe coming forward with just inflationary asks. We need to look at them with a lens of equity, and are they all at the right place to start with? There's a big piece of work there to untangle all the arrangements that have been arrived at that have been serving the community, but how has that happened over time, and how do we standardize that? That was part of the work that we set out to do and we tasked staff with doing, and it's going to be a challenge. Some of these asks, this is coupled with the increase in the granting program that is administered by our external partners. And I expect that the applications that come forward through this program, to be very impactful for a community. And unlike the grant program, which has a cap on it, this really has only the willingness of both parties as the ceiling of what can be accomplished through these. And that's a distinct change. Now, to realize that, it needs to feed into our financial planning process, which is thorough, as it should be for an organization, but also has its challenges from a timing perspective. We run into I know we've council thinks about budget in the fall, but staff are building that from March onwards. And how do we feed things into that in an appropriate way? So I think this will filter out likely some of the smaller ones that might find another way to achieve their funding. And but I hope, the expectation, I think, of all of us was that this is there to really unlock the potential of community and to ensure that these partnerships happen in an equitable way, and they can have maximum impact on community. So I also struggle with the timelines, and this scenario that we sort of came upon in the discussion around a 2-year pilot project, but a lengthy time for renew. We'll have to figure that. We'll need to figure that that scenario out. And this original phase is also going to, this inception phase is also going to just come with 11 prepackaged sort of folks or organizations to engage with and issues to grapple with. And then hopefully those efficiencies can be found over time, because I don't know that this timeline is really comfortable for anybody interacting with it, whether it's staff or council or the folks coming forward. So I hope the destination is worth the journey or the with this. But I do think that this is a way. There is a path now, and we'll work on smoothing out that path. The work to smooth out that path, I guess, will be ongoing over time as this starts to roll out. Perhaps there's something in between the granting programs and the small type of asset, like you mentioned, Councillor Pettingill, that we should consider somewhere along the way. But I'm not looking at I wouldn't be interested in slowing down this process that we have here for our existing partners in any way while we attempt to grapple with that. So yeah, it's a challenging one, but I think it's also full of opportunity. So look forward to seeing the outcome of this work, and the extension of the 1 year, the year-to-year agreements, I think will be, and thank you, Councillor Stoner, for highlighting that. I think that is of critical importance. I know we can't endorse a budget before we endorse a budget, but how we address that and provide the assurance to our partners that we're not looking to step back from any of these commitments, but to pave a path of being able to step more fully into these commitments going forward. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We do not have any late agenda items. We have some correspondence action. Oh no, not action requested. Items referred from the consent agenda. So I'll go in the Councillor Stoner, you pulled the minutes. That was I'm going by the order they appeared, so we'll start with minutes.
Yeah, just a clarification that wasn't captured. I left the meeting at 1:55 and didn't return until 2:15, and so I was actually not present for the vote on the transit item. And I'm sorry I didn't get that correction to staff in advance, but just wanted to make sure that was properly articulated in the minutes. Thanks.
Okay, and just to be clear, that was the committee of the whole meeting for June 23rd, 2026. You left the meeting at
1:55 and returned at 2:15.
So then you were absent for the vote that happened in that time?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And with those amendments, I will move the amended approval of the amended minutes.
Corrected minutes.
Corrected. Thank you. Corrected
I will
minutes.
second that. I see no hands for comment on this matter, so I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, and good catch. So next we have we're on to correspondence. We had the letter from Mayors Elliot and Heintzman. Did you pull that? Was that yours, Councillor Pettingill? Yep.
I think it was a multi-pull. So I had a few comments to make. I don't know if my colleagues did, but I just wanted to highlight and thank former Mayor Heintzman and former Mayor Elliot for sharing some of the experience and recollections. It very much aligns with my observations of, and I think we saw it when the BCER came to present to us most recently, but the lack of oversight and cumulative impacts is really challenging. And then we see, there's a whole bunch of, well, sometimes, and timeframes seem pretty short, but engagement on a very particular thing, and then not long after, there's expansions and increases, and no reassessment holistically, and it's the foot in the door, and then creep, as opposed to, it's never like, where are we? What is actually happening here? And so we end up with things that are much bigger than anyone really was engaged on and that we've looked at as a whole, which is really challenging. And so I think the request that the province do a much better job in terms of paying attention to cumulative impacts, to holding proponents to account for commitments and promises and assertions they make during engagement is really important, because that's the premise on which the public response and feedback is given. And if all that changes, the feedback has to be reconsidered, I think. And this brings to mind, it's a slight tangent, but there's a recent wood fiber ad in the Chief I've seen, and it's a local family speaking about why the project is so valuable, because they don't have to go away to camp. And I don't want to begrudge someone in that circumstance who's able to stay close to home. I think that is a wonderful thing. It's what we're trying to do with a walkable community. But what that advertising, it conveniently ignores, is the opportunity for that family and a handful of others like them to do that is reliant on 1,900 plus other people being away from their community in a camp. And so like the I would say mis or disinformation that surrounds this from the proponent, and how does the community engage, and how does the province start to, require accurate and wholesome information so that we can engage fairly and truthfully in these things. It's really kind of frustrating. So I appreciate the former mayors speaking up about this, and I really share the frustration.
Okay. If we're going to do, I'd just be looking for a motion. If we want to do a motion to receive and then make comments on it, we can do that. Or if there's another action, I'd be looking for that. But I'll go to Councillor Greenlaw. You're next on my speakers list. I'm just looking for someone to do one of those things.
Oh, I can make a motion to receive if you want, and I'll speak to it a second.
Yeah, I'll second it, and away you go.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been thinking about is how to follow, like this letter made me think about it again, is how to follow up on what's been happening with the BCER. And I have been speaking to some of my friends in the professional community and the resource industry, trying to figure out if we can perhaps engage the professional oversight body of EGBC in trying to effectively enforce the regulators enforcing the legislation that they have been, or the regulations that they have been entrusted by the public to uphold. So anyways, I just wanted to put that in people's minds. That's something that I'm exploring on my own, and I may be coming back to council to see if anybody wants to support that in the future as a means of trying to get our regulatory body actually enforcing on these regulations and protecting the environment and the people, as engineers are obliged to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on this? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, I too just want to thank previous former mayors Heintzman and Elliot for penning this letter. I think it's an important piece of the record, mostly from an institutional and community history of the meandering history that this project has had in our community. And it reminds us of the important call of the role of senior orders of government in the trust that the public really does need to hold in the institutions, and how that is being eroded. So I think I will further work with Councillor Greenlaw on opportunities to either engage the regulatory bodies and or the professional associations to see where there's further effort to either build relationship and or trust. We brought it up in the presentation from BCER, that with a perhaps not a formal invitation, but maybe we do need to follow up in writing a formal invitation to come to our community and explain what their role is and answer questions that folks have, because as soon as we start to lose trust in those regulatory bodies, it all just kind of falls apart. So Councillor Greenlaw, I'll follow up with you. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? I was happy to see this come through, and if there's a group of people that can empathize with our position of grappling with this matter, this is that. One line, the conclusion was a significant lack of confidence in the provincial regulatory bodies tasked with monitoring the project. I think that sums up a lot of the experiences that we've I'll say that we've had, but that's past tense, that we're having currently. And I think that there's a tremendous amount of room to do better, and I think that's a fair expectation, and I think that's a lot of what our advocacy and our asks have been and continue to be, and then articulating the many ways that can happen. So thank you to our former mayors for for continuing to advocate for community, yeah, so it's a great piece of not just of history, but really of background and perspective of the experience of being on the front lines of this, and I share in their concerns broadly. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We had someone pull the letter from MP Weiler on the Build Community Strong Fund. Oh, Councillor Stoner, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. Given the staff in the room, we might not have an answer, but I was just curious, given the time deadline, don't think I've seen a request for a council motion come through. I'm just curious if we've submitted anything to this opportunity fund.
Through the mayor, we have not submitted anything through this fund.
Would referring this correspondence to staff?
Yeah, so my next action would be to refer this to staff for consideration for the July 15th submission deadline.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Second by Councillor Hamilton. Any further comment? Councillor Pettingill?
I'll just note that I've had inquiries from the community as well, and I have passed those on previously about, are we pursuing this, and sort of it seems there's a fair bit of excitement around this particular opportunity, and so I'm glad to thank my colleague for formally forwarding this.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, and just in follow-up, I think it's important to note that this is basically a rebrand of existing funding pot that the federal government did have, so it's not new money. But given the amount of need in our community, a number of projects on the go, I would assume that there's something in our budget that could benefit from some federal funding dollars. So I would appreciate staff having a look at it. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I see no further hands. I'm happy to support this, and with so many moving pieces, I hope we have something that fits this program, and if we don't, they have a very well-designed program that has somehow skirted the needs of a community that has tremendous needs. So hopefully we can find something there that fits. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. I pulled the, and I think others had interest in these, the two letters around and the staff responses to the noise complaints around Fortis pipeline work. And these two were from Valley Cliff sort of generally, and subsequent to these, I think we've received others. And I just wanted to highlight the challenges that we've been having there, yeah, and bring attention to this, where, and I think these have been referred to. I mean, there's a staff reply, so they've clearly been referred to staff. So I think at this point I'm looking to move receipt, but I would also like to understand what's happening on this file. And I'm going to try a question to staff, and I respect that there's not always rarely the folks in the room to answer it. Will we the next update we have from major projects, is that coming to us soon? I believe we haven't seen one in a while. Is that coming in a couple week or next regular meeting?
Yeah, through the chair, it's scheduled for the 21st of July.
Okay, so at that time, will we have a more substantive update on these matters as part of that update? Is that a reasonable expectation?
Yes, by then there will be more information available for council. Staff are planning to provide council with more information this week on the noise issue around the pipeline construction work in Valleycliff and the Finch Drive area. We just didn't have it ready to go by tonight, but staff are working on it.
Okay, thank you. So with that in mind, I'm going to move receipt. I was contemplating referring these to a future meeting, but this subject's coming at us at our next regular meeting, so I don't feel we need to do that. So I'll move receipt of these two, and then I have some comments. Are you seconding that, Councillor French? Yeah, just I think that this project in its two pieces, it continues to be impactful to the community, and I know our staff are doing their best to work within the capacity and regulations that they have to address it. But really, in my opinion, this can be executed in a less impactful way, and I think that's the commitment that I heard that these proponents make to community. So I look forward to engaging with this matter more fulsomely at our next regular meeting. And I hope this issue is largely resolved by the time we get there, but that remains to be seen. So I'll leave it there for now. Councillor French, I'll go to you as seconder, and then Councillor Pettingill, is that your hand?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Herford. I have corresponded with a few of the people that we have had email messages with, and I'm quite surprised by how level-headed these folks are in a situation where they're being awakened at 5:30 in the morning. Babies are not getting adequate sleep. Their walls are rattling. So I have a great deal of empathy for the people who are impacted by this work, and I'm anticipating that whatever it is our staff has to share with us next week and in the weeks coming on this will be valuable as we work towards resolve.
Councillor Pettingill?
Yeah, I'd just like to flag that I know that noise bylaws are delegated. We do have policy on a number of things. While this timelines and so on may be a priority for proponents, it's not necessarily the district's priority, I would say, in a big context. And we've just had a discussion about upper levels of government not paying attention to community concerns, not enforcing, not, providing meaningful consequence when rules are ignored. And so I think we need to walk the walk or walk our talk. And I'll sort of leave it at there. I think I would ask Fortis to make sure they and their contractors are doing a lot better. We have a pretty generous from 7 in the morning till fairly late in the evening where you can do work all week long. And so there's not a reason to be causing these disturbances.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton?
Yeah, thanks very much. This was addressed in the temporary use permit 74. I think it was section B3 spoke to noise and allow us, that section allows us to request noise monitoring from Fortis. So I assume that's what we're going to be hearing about, which I'm very grateful to. I'm grateful that we're hearing this. We're going to be receiving this information. And I sincerely hope that Fortis takes these complaints very seriously because that was, again, one of the primary concerns about putting
industrial use, so next to a residential neighborhood. The two uses are generally incompatible, often due to noise, and this is what we're seeing. So I look forward to hearing from staff. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Stoner, did I see your hand earlier? Or are you good? Okay. We'll engage with this matter more fulsomely at our next regular meeting. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And then we had the letter from MLA Valeriot's office on the fuel prices. Was that you, or who pulled that one? Sorry, I don't have. Yep, go ahead, Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor Herford. I pulled this to shine a light on the fact that in the last few weeks, we've seen significant, blatant profit taking from the gas stations in Squamish, with fuel prices significantly higher here compared to the prices charged throughout Metro Vancouver. We're once again seeing big oil trying to defy gravity in Squamish. Metro Vancouver fuel stations impose a transit tax that isn't applied to fuel purchased in Squamish. And in my mind, this means prices in Squamish should never be higher than the prices in Metro Vancouver. So I propose that the MLA letter be received and that Council direct the Mayor to write to the BC Utilities Commission to indicate support for MLA Valeriot's request for prioritized monitoring of fuel prices between Squamish and Mount Currie. And if that's seconded, I'll say a bit more.
I will second that. Do you have the exact wording of that you can get to our minute taker just for?
Yes, I do.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. We'll deal with that after. Would you like to speak to it first? That's the priority here.
So former MLA Jordan Sturdy did some excellent work on this file and helped push the BC Utilities Commission to analyze and then report on fuel pricing transparently. And sadly, that good work hasn't resulted in big oil taking massive profits out of the wallets and purses of Squamish drivers. Shining a light on this does a few things. If the oil companies are charging Squamish drivers the equivalent of a transit tax, then I say, let's impose a transit tax on fuel that's purchased here and have that benefit come back to our corridor and our residents and visitors in the form of a regional transit system that'll help reduce the number of private vehicles using Highway 99. And this is preferred over allowing the fuel companies a way to fund big bonuses for industry executives. The efforts of our current MLA will be strengthened by local governments in the region if we all speak up. Maybe Whistler and Pemberton will follow our lead on this.
Thank you. Happy to support this. This has been a reoccurring topic since well before my time in local government, and I will confirm that it was almost 20 cents a liter cheaper in Metro Vancouver when I was there over the weekend than it is here in Squamish. And I'm sure if we looked at areas that are much harder to get fuel to, we would find that it is cheaper yet again. So for whatever reason, beyond greed, there's something happening here in the Sea to Sky that does need to be addressed. And I do agree that if we're effectively paying a tax that would support a regional support transit of any sort, then we should be receiving that benefit and thus delivering those services to our community. But the situation as it sits is untenable, unfair, and deserves more scrutiny than it's gotten to date. Councillor Penningill.
Yeah, I have a little bit of mixed feelings about it. So happy to support the resolution. My mixed emotions are, on the one hand, it's really frustrating to see the lack of responsiveness of upper levels of government to their citizens, the sort of priority put on loading the pockets of multi-billion-dollar fossil fuel companies in a climate crisis instead of funding things like transit and so on. Really frustrating. And Squamish is certainly an extreme example of, I think, fossil fuel greed. On the flip side of that, we have seen now ICE vehicle sales have plateaued And year over year, EVs are just growing and growing and growing. And we were told year over year, oh, it's just a blip. It's just a blip. We're seeing it's not a blip over and over. And we're up to 30% of global sales now are EVs and growing so fast. So I think as it does things like this, the fossil fuel industry is sealing its own demise, which is kind of the good news story in this. So it's painful right now, but I'm trying to find the silver lining, and I think this maybe actually gets us to a good place a little bit faster. The more uncomfortable they make us, the faster we make a change to something better.
All right. I'm not gonna. It's a great conversation, and for me here, it's the inequity on the journey to something new. So, yes, we're headed to that new place. Let's do that in a way that that doesn't put undue burden onto folks needing this right now and haven't been able to make that choice, or let's put the funds that they're collecting to work to serve our community. So, but I agree, we're heading to a different reality on this matter. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. So the next letter was the letter from BC Transit speaking about, sorry, I just pull it up here. And when this letter hit my inbox, I had to go for a walk around the block. This is challenging. It says essentially that that BC Transit, as part of this exercise, we're reviewing the existing expansion priorities that have been identified in previous years but not yet implemented. So our multi-year planning with BC Transit that we've agreed to with BC Transit is, and I don't want to put this on to BC Transit. BC Transit's operating within the constraints that are put upon them by the provincial government support of BC Transit. But essentially, the conversations we've had with community, the decisions that we've fed into our budgeting process for expansions that have not yet been implemented, which is what 5-year, 10-year now for us financial planning processes are. This is a huge setback, and introduces uncertainty for our community, that the transit expansion that we've all discussed in here and committed to and baked into our financial planning to deliver our part is now even has more questions around it. So I wanted to highlight that this is the state of transit. I'm not vilifying BC Transit. They're trying to deal with all the asks of communities across the province and being the intermediary to the province to come with their funds. And this ties in with our previous letter. We were just discussing around the motor fuel tax, or the price gouging, however you want to look at that, or I think they're one and the same. And I want to shed some light on this, and so that the community was aware, and we could at least prepare ourselves for what is likely a challenging space to operate in as we strive to expand our transit service as has been previously agreed to and that we've committed to as a council. So I think anyways, I'm going to move receipt of this for right now, and I'm going to take that opening rant as my comment, and I'll go to others on the speakers list if you want. Are you seconding that? Yeah, would you like to speak to it?
Equally disappointed. I understand BC Transit is the intermediary from provincial budgets, and they're doing what they can with provincial budgets, but the province needs to understand that it's difficult for us to do our planning when their numbers and their budgets are constantly changing, and particularly when they reduce from what we had planned. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments on this? Go ahead, Councillor Pettingill.
Well, I just hope we keep this letter front and center when we're having conversations with the province about housing targets and where we are, because this is a key component on doing that. I think as a community, we have been doing everything plus in terms of doing what the province has asked of us. And I don't feel like they're meeting us halfway, like something like the fuel tax is not money out of their pocket, for example, and we could use that to address some of these things. There are solutions there, and so I think we have to be ready to push back on other files where we are doing our part and they're not coming to the table.
Yeah, thank you. And I agree. So that's where I'm not suggesting we write a letter. We've been advocating in the past for longer term, sustainable, predictable funding for transit, and what we get in return is this. So yeah, challenging, and I think I have direction to continue advocacy on transit, better, more sustainable transit funding previously. So you're absolutely right. It'll feed into all those other discussions around how we're working towards our frequent transit network and better serving our community, and how this is not getting us there. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? I think we're all opposed to the content of the letter, but no one is opposed to that motion. So moving on, and this is one of the other frustrating pieces of this. The next piece that I also pulled was the 2026-2027 BC Transit Annual Operating Agreement. So this was a recommendation for Committee of the Whole that Council authorized the Mayor and Corporate Officer to execute the annual operating agreement for 2026-2027 between BC Transit and District of Squamish. Now, this includes some expansions that we haven't yet implemented. So I know we don't always have we may not have the folks in the room for this, but I'm looking to grapple with this. It feels like doing this now seems pointless with what with this letter we received from BC Transit. So could we refer this to, if this was referred to the next regular meeting, could we have staff available to speak to it or look at it in the in-between? I feel like it changes what is there.
Sorry, could you repeat?
So that's okay. So the matter that I pulled is the 2026-2027 annual operating agreement. In there, I believe it speaks to things that have yet to be implemented, that this letter says we're not implementing. So what do we do with this recommendation? And if we don't have the folks here, could we refer it to the next regular and have someone speak to it, or should we just sign it and send it off into the void? It feels disingenuous.
Thank you, through the mayor. I think what you're asking is a need for reconciliation with the most recent letter about transit expansion and the current operating agreement that you're being asked to ratify. So yes, if you wanted to defer that to the regular, in the interim, I could go back to staff and have that information provided.
Okay, so I'll move that we refer this recommendation, this item, which was originally appeared as 6E1, to the next regular business meeting. And second by Councillor French. I can rant about this for many hours, but we'll leave it at that and save that discussion for another day. Any other comment on this? Yeah, Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, I won't be supporting the motion on the floor as there is discrepancy absolutely between the communication we received from BC Housing. This has happened in the past, and it's a result of an offset between their budgeting cycle and ours. And I think it's important that we continue, even if there may not be 100% certainty that we're going to get the matching fund needed, that we are still really clear that we are committed, that this money is in our budget as the various representatives across the region for BC Transit are advocating within their organization for where those limited dollars are going to go. So I don't want to be pulling back at this time. I want to give everything to Mr. Ringma to be able to do his advocacy work internally to get whatever dollars he can within our community. I'm afraid that if we don't sign this now, it's just one additional thing for them to be like, well, see, Squamish isn't 100% in. And so I appreciate that it may mean that we sign it and they come back and they say, oh, the money is not there. But the money has already been set aside in our budget. And then we work on that reconciliation in our internal budget in the 2027 budget. And that's how we've done it in the past. So I won't support the motion on the floor. I'd rather just see us move forward with our commitment that we made last week at Committee of the Whole, 2 weeks ago.
Any other comments on this? I appreciate the perspective, Councillor Stoner, and I generally agree. I think a 2-week delay on this, just to understand the to get some perspective on this, would be, I don't see that being a deal breaker, but I understand that perspective as well. Council, any other comments on this? Okay, so I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Anderson, Councillor Pettingill, Councillor Greenlaw, and Councillor Stoner opposed. Motion fails. So I guess we'll. So then we would. So then I will move then that we that Council approve that recommendation, and we'll go from there. So second by Councillor Hamilton. I think, I mean, this step, I think I'd still like to understand where we lay, and I like to execute things that stand a strong likelihood of moving forward. But I think given this situation, this is 6 of one, half dozen of another. So we'll see where the chips fall and we'll move it forward. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And that is everything that was pulled from the consent agenda.
I had one more, the BC Hydro
Did you?
letter I pulled.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. Where was? Sorry, I missed that one, but go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I guess, clarify, and I appreciate the letter. Is my recollection, and maybe it's a misrecollection, was that this was sort of part of an invite for BC Hydro to come and speak to the community. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that was it wasn't the explicit intent, but that was one of the outcomes here. So we asked for the information. I think the best way for them to relay that information is to come and present, but first and foremost is getting the information. So that was the intent.
Thank you. Sorry, we were just noting that none of us had that this item had been pulled. So we were just figuring out if we can discuss it. Just one moment.
Okay. Well, the letter has been sent, so we can talk about and maybe we can talk about it offline. I have not yet received a reply of any sort, and we are set to meet.
Yeah, I did actually ask to pull 6B4, which this one is in my.
Yeah, 6B4 is one of the noise complaints on this. So I'm just, no, it's okay. I just wanted to make sure that it's the mechanism we're using for speaking about it might be critical to that, but it is a letter that's already been sent. So I think it is a conversation for offline, just so, I can share an update that I have not received a reply back, but I will strive to have them be here.
Okay, yeah, and just I appreciate that. I was just looking for that clarification. The other piece of clarification I guess I wanted to share. I've had requests from the community that BC Hydro that we request, and maybe it's something that can be handled in the discussions as this moves forward. Not just sort of information that they speak about verbally, but sort of the documentation, the paperwork behind the things we've asked for. And they may decline, but I've had requests that we ask for that as part of this.
So we'll get a reply and we'll get as fulsome information as we can extract from them. And I don't want to get too, obviously I wasn't too prescriptive there. I was asking for the information, and we can work on getting sufficient information. So let's move past this one. We've already, and I'll keep, any updates will come through this mechanism or another to be more timely. And we'll see what we can do on this file. Okay, so, and sorry for the miss, that there was some labeling issues. Did you have something else that?
No, I'll move receipt then, I guess.
No, we already did that because it wasn't pulled, but we just spoke about it. So
okay,
it's late. It's been a long day. We're both on side and off side with that. So let's just keep moving. Okay, so we had, we didn't have any business arising from the minutes. Now, on the matter of notice of motion, Councillor Anderson sent through an email earlier with a notice of motion, and I just want to go to our corporate officer to orient us on the process of notice of motion. We don't use, it's not a function that we use often. So can you orient us on where this puts us right now?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor. Notice of motion is laid out in section 14 of our procedure bylaw. It's a two-part process. So the first one is section 14.1. A council member can bring it to the corporate officer and the mayor. We can find two dates for it. The first would be for information, which would note in the minutes the second date that it would come back for council consideration. The second part, if you wish to consider it this evening, is 14.2. So council may waive the notice of motion process outlined in section 14.1 of this bylaw if the motion is of a time-sensitive nature and with an affirmative vote of council or at the mayor's discretion.
Okay, so we have the, did everybody receive the notice of motion from Councillor Anderson? Sorry, I didn't look at I know I've seen it, but I didn't look at the address. Sorry, I'm just going to pull it up here. Actually, Councillor Anderson, did you send it to council as a whole, or was it to?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I'm just going to send it to council, forward it on. Oh, I see it there. Okay, so everybody has this. My preference would be to be as close to our process as we can, and maybe treat tonight as a notice and look at this in a couple of weeks. I don't see it being, I think everything's time sensitive. So Councillor Anderson, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, I'm not sure whether we want to follow through. I presented and asked for a seconder, but I'm certainly wishing to speak to the time sensitivity of this matter, especially since there's other organizations that are involved that are very anxious to work with us on discussing an application. It's September 25th. It's $25 million.
Okay, so the process for this, sorry, I'm just getting a note here. So then the council, so the motion would be, and I'll put it forward for discussion. The council waive the notice of motion process and consider the item regarding trade diversification corridors fund application at the July 7th, 2026 regular business meeting, which would be now. Are you seconding that, Councillor?
Certainly, thank you.
Great. Would you like to speak to it?
Thank you, Mayor Herford. The Stream 3, supporting regional growth, will target projects that address trade-enabling transportation infrastructure gaps that are impeding regional growth. There are two other streams we don't qualify for. They are large, they're big. This one is a smaller program, and it is a fund that has been around before. In fact, this is the third
Mayor Hartford,
incarnation of this
point
fund.
of order. Corporate officers.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Through the chair, I'd just like to clarify that this will be a vote to waive the notice of motion, not to hear the whole item
Thank
straight
you.
away. So we'll vote on it first.
So
and
if you
then we
could,
can hear.
so okay, so focus your comments on the urgency, because closer to our process would be that this would be discussed. I mean, even in 2 weeks would be a bit sooner, but anyways, go ahead. So the urgency is the topic, and then you'll have an opportunity, if supported, you'll have opportunity to make the deeper comments.
Thank you. We're out of practice on notice of motion. The proposal is to speak with SSA Marine Squamish Terminals and Nunchikai Development Corporation, who have infrastructure projects and needs that are imminently eligible under this program. The prospect of assembling an application is a bit daunting with the time that remains, and there is a lot of technical data that needs to be assembled. I have gone some length to try to give us a head start, but it is not a small process for any one of us that may engage in this. So because of the complexity and the partnerships that may be involved to achieve scale under the program, it really is necessary that we move quickly to initiate consultations. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's the urgency or the case for urgency here. Any comments on this? Go ahead.
Well, I guess I don't have clarity with some of these things. Some of these words make me nervous about what are we actually talking about endorsing and what sort of project, which, like, to me, there's a whole bunch of discussion in terms of, is this actually aligned with our economic development goals as a district? Like, what are those goals? What, like we've heard, there's an opportunity for $25 million. To what end? Like, is this endorsing our staff to work on finding a use for $25 million, or there's a specific project in mind and we will discuss that? Like, for me, there'd be follow-up meetings and lots of discussions. When I look at our council timeline, I understand like there's a lot of time for competition for our time between now and so. Is this truly urgent in the context of everything else? I'm not sure.
I'll make sure you have another chance at this, Councillor Anderson. I think another piece of this for me is I understand the sort of the timelines, but with passing this motion, we're also tasking our staff to do specific, like, their staff capacity pieces between here and the application timeline. I know we have some of these things that might be able to be sort of it's never as easy as dusting off an old application and resubmitting it, but we did have some of the things that are listed in the for consideration here have been included as part of a prior work, whether it's the dredging or the alternative sort of everything truck route related, including the Pemberton Laurelwood Bridge. But I agree it deserves a deeper dive than we can give it at this meeting. So I think the urgency is I'm challenged by the urgency of this. I think it is a important consideration, but the motion we're trying to urgently get to has challenges me with many other initiatives that we've been quite strategic about and we don't necessarily have the capacity for. So I'm trying to balance those things. I don't know that I'm sold on the urgency of giving this direction that's here, but perhaps understanding the capacity better to contemplate a decision like this would be more appropriate. But I'm looking forward to hearing from the rest of council on this. Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thank you, and appreciate Councillor Anderson's first use of our notice of motion in our term, maybe 2 terms. It's an important way to elevate conversation. I'm not willing to entertain it as an urgent item this evening. I just received the information at 6 p.m. and we've been in council meetings since 10 a.m. this morning. And I haven't had time to digest it or understand what the pros or cons would be. I understand that there's a timeline of September 25th, and that's a substantial ask for any application, as I just directed one to staff for next week, which is maybe there's something in our budget that would fit in, but I would entertain this to come in our regular notice of motion process in 2 weeks' time for us to fulsomely evaluate what is being presented, but I'm not willing to entertain it now this evening. Thanks.
Can I amend, I'm going to I'm going to test our corporate officer here on this one. Can I amend this motion so that it uses the 21st, which would be the next regular meeting?
Yes, you can amend.
Okay. I'll amend the motion then to reflect that. So I'll amend the motion just by adjusting the date to the 21st, which is our next regular meeting. Seconded by Councillor Stoner. I think this is important and deserves some consideration. This will give some time to prepare for that and understand this the implications of the request and the opportunities that it may present, but the more fulsomely and more aligned with our process. This is still an acceleration from having it appear on our agenda in the normal flow of this would be for it to appear on our agenda this week as a heads up that we'll be discussing it in 2 weeks. So I think this is still an acceleration and perhaps not the urgency requested by our colleague, Councillor Anderson. However, it is faster than the other processes, and it's not a dismissal of the matter. So I think this is an appropriate course of action. I'll just go to the seconder. You'll absolutely have an opportunity on this one, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Stoner, would you like to speak to it? No. Okay, I will go to you, Councillor Anderson, then Councillor French.
Very good. This is a once in a decade program. The types of programs have gone back 25 years. This is version 3. It doesn't come along again soon. I have brought this to your attention, Mayor Herford, in March, and I sent a package around to all of my council colleagues on June 1st. These are matters concerning community safety, as well as opportunity to foster passenger rail, because we need certain infrastructure. We have infrastructure gaps here. Short line railway means we can facilitate passenger rail. Without filling in these infrastructure gaps, short line rail is challenged here. We have an unsafe intersection on the highway. It is notoriously unsafe at Site B. It's a real problem. And we have all the users there crying out for attention on that. This program can address that issue. And without addressing that issue, Site B its use is completely challenged. And we have pressing needs there, including Squamish Forestry, who needs to relocate there. Active transportation. This is money for active transportation along our downtown truck route. The OCP, all of the policy I will follow up with, but all of these elements of the 7 proposed project items, and they're not all ours, they're also SSA Marine and Squamish Nation and Chikai. They all have established District of Squamish policies in support. I'm concerned about the delay, but just wanted to emphasize the benefits, the co-benefits, the safety issues that we need to address. These are not scary projects. They're in our history. We've been dealing with them for years. We just haven't found the money for them. That includes the BC Rail Yards. So it's a once-in-a-decade program for up to 25 million. And there's a lot of consultation that we need to be doing. So the earlier, the better. Time's of the essence. This is not new for us tonight. I brought it to our attention a month ago, all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor French.
Mayor Herford, I won't be supporting the amendment. I was able to digest the information that Councillor Anderson sent to us over the short dinner break that we had. And I fully agree with him. This is not new. I have been hearing about the need to dredge our port areas for 30 years. I think that this is urgent and deserves discussion tonight.
Okay, any other comments on this? So again, this is on, I'm going to call the question on the amendment. All in favor? And opposed? Councillor French and Anderson opposed, motion carries. Now we're back to the main motion as amended. Any discussion on that? I feel like we've had a reasonable amount of time to comment on that. And I just as we start this, we do need a motion to extend following this before 10 o'clock. So we have 4 minutes to get through some comments if there are any. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mayor Herford, I simply wanted to point out that while I do feel this deserves urgent discussion, talking about it in 2 weeks' time is better than not talking about it at all.
Thank you. Councillor Pennington.
Just a point of order, if we're not going through the accelerated process, does not a notion of motion just require a seconder and then it happens on the next regular? Does it require a council vote?
There might be another path to get there, but this path will get us there.
Okay.
And we've started it, so I think there's multiple paths that lead to that. So yeah, I look forward to being able to engage with this in a more fulsome way than allows at the late hour and the relatively short runway for this topic this evening. So I'm obviously supporting the motion as amended. I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. I will reluctantly move a motion to extend. Second by Councillor French. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So now we're on to open question periods. This is any clarification related to agenda items. Anybody at all? No? No questions. Council or staff announcements. Councillor French.
Mayor Herford, sharing tonight that I attended on June 25th, the Helping Hands Society annual general meeting. This organization is doing amazing work, and that was reflected in the annual general meeting. Hard work with people who are difficult to work with. So from that meeting, I learned that in 2025, 20,347 nights were provided in transitional and emergency shelter beds by the society, 23,305 showers for people with nowhere else to clean themselves. 152 toxic drug poisoning reversals took place last year, and 896 unique monthly food bank visitors were served. These are just a few of the stats that were made available, and I think that they give us a picture of the effectiveness of the society and the great work that they're doing in our community.
Thank you for that. Other councillors? Councillor Anderson.
Mayor Herford, dear colleagues, we have lost two outstanding citizens in recent days. Brian Kuchera has passed. Brian arrived here about 1974, I believe from a Franklin River logging camp, already a logger sports enthusiast. He began right away as a hardcore Squamish Days volunteer, and over the next 40 years remained so, including several years as Squamish Days Association president. He became a mentor to athletes and other volunteers in diverse roles in our big annual community festival. Brian was a team builder, and it is largely his team still in place today managing that festival. He was an innovator, ready to work with other innovators and try out new ideas. Brian was also an ambassador not only for his sport, but for Squamish, for visitors here. For example, Raw Hudson groups dropping into town, Logger Sports Show in the park, and around the world. He was a show business pro. With others in the Squamish Days family, Brian Couture created a legacy for years to come. The other person that we've lost in recent days, Mayor Herford, is Norm Halverson. Norm spent his whole life in Squamish, 9 decades. He made notable contributions to youth sports over the years, especially to baseball leagues. Norm was always generous with his time and his sense of humor, and as a help for local causes. He was a founding director of the Squamish Days, or the Squamish Logger Sports Festival Committee from 1958. He drove ambulances as a volunteer through the 60s and 70s, which, by the way, were paid for through Logger Sports proceeds. And he served on the Squamish Seniors Housing Society board for 36 years straight. He made a very substantial contribution to the Squamish Hospital Foundation, financial contribution. He'll be missed as a friend, a family man, and a citizen of Squamish. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Any other announcements, Councillor Penningill?
Yeah, my notes aren't working for me, but I was able to attend at Totem Hall and saw Councillor Anderson there as well. There was a thank you, a recognition for the Squamish peacekeepers in the transition to the community safety team. And so I have obviously seen the truck around and some of the uniforms, but didn't fully know what exactly this was, but it was essentially a group of incredibly dedicated nation members from the Squamish Valley who served as peace officers for the community, worked closely with the RCMP, built a lot of skills, and worked very closely with community in very challenging situations, and were often called into North Vancouver to help out with things. Many Squamish Nation councillors are and were members of the Squamish Peacekeepers, and just learning the history and the dedication and the commitment of these folks was really kind of inspiring, and it just really shows what community can do when it comes together to address big challenges. And the fact that this was all done on a volunteer basis for decades was just really quite inspiring. So I want to extend a thank you to all the Squamish peacekeepers, and sort of I guess celebrate the community safety team, which is sort of a new approach in investing more formally in making sure a similar program is very well resourced. I got to I've lost the exact name of it, but went to Discover Aviation Day at the airport. And so they had lots of kids flying and seeing the planes and in and out of planes, and saw some of the plane building and technology and development that's going on there, and got some questions about the status of our airport strategy. But it was a really great day, and everyone really seemed to be enjoying it. So thank you to everyone that put that on. And I have to say, Ampton the Park, we're 2 nights in and going strong. So Thursday nights come out, great performances every Thursday night.
Okay, thank you. Any other updates? I'll keep mine brief. Today, I had the opportunity on the. We do this right on the 2. Yeah, I think this was since we last met, was the grand opening of the last regular meeting anyways, was the grand opening of the new search and rescue, Squamish search and rescue facility at the airport. Just as a thank you for the, we'll tie it into the to Councillor Penningill's comments. And it's an incredible facility there, and I'm happy to that this council has been able to play the role that they have in moving that forward. But really, it was driven by this incredible volunteer organization, and more things like this is what I hope we can accomplish through our community partnerships agreement, to tie it back into some matters that we discussed today. But these are our substantive pieces of infrastructure that the we were able to play a small supporting role in realizing, and the level of professionalism that we have in our search and rescue is truly to be celebrated and is unlike anything that exists anywhere. And I think this facilities is a far better representation of that than the previous home. And now they have a long-term home and can plan those future investments that they have that they aspire to on the site. And it was great to see folks come together, and I know many members of council were there. It was good to see Director Rainbow there representing SLRD that also contributed some funds. And then, of course, all the members of the organization that were present. And I encourage anyone that hasn't been to go and have a look if there's ever opportunity to do so, and pay particular attention to the there's a wall there dedicated to the folks that supported this project. That's members of our business community that made contributions, and you'll recognize a lot of the names on that board from other projects and other contributions in the community. And I know that when I need services that are related to those are the exact types of things that I consider when I'm making my choices. I encourage others to do the same, because this is what really makes community is I think local government playing a role, the nonprofit volunteer community playing a role, and the business community playing a role. So it's a big success story there from my perspective. And these folks have been executing this project while delivering world-class service to those that need it in and around the community, which is also remarkable. So kudos to everyone involved, and it was a great event. Similar to, I'm going to build on Councillor Anderson. Thank you for those remarks about Norm and Brian. I didn't know Norm well, but I knew Norm when I saw him. But Brian Couture, I grew up growing up. There were points in time where Brian lived in a motorhome in my driveway, and he was known as Uncle Brian in my house. So it's a tremendous loss for all of us. I thought I could say more about that, but yeah. I'm going to move. We terminate the meeting. All in favor. Thank you.